Okay, we're ready.
Good evening. I want to welcome you to the Wednesday, September 14th, 2022 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Alain?
Here.
Commissioner Irvin?
Here.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Here.
Vice Chair Roberts?
Present.
And Chairwoman.
Here.
7 members are present and we have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Madam Chair and Planning Commission, our agenda was posted on Thursday, September 8th. Our meeting has been posted in accordance with state law and city policy.
Thank you. The next item is the acceptance of the agenda. And I would like to move item 2C and the agenda to the first item of the agenda, keeping the rest of the agenda. So in public hearings, it would take Saline Palm Springs first.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we would also just note for the benefit of the public that item 2G is being recommended for continuance based on issue with noticing. So if anyone's here for that item would not be heard.
And that is the 12-unit multifamily residential development on Camino Norte.
Correct.
Okay, we are at public comments. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction before us. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on items that are not on the listed agenda. Each member of the public will have 3 minutes. Testimony for public hearing can be offered at this time or at the time of the public hearing. Members of the public who would like to comment on item 1A, which is the consent calendar, are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. Are there members of the public who would like to comment?
I'd like to comment, please. My name is Mark Elkins. Is it okay to speak?
Yes.
Okay. So Chair Wormack, Vice Chair Roberts, and other commissioners, thank you for letting me speak today. Again, my name is Mark Elkins. I want to speak about agenda item 2C. I live directly next door to the planned project. And I can say that both my neighbors and myself's patience have grown quite thin over this project. This project was supposed to be completed years ago. After having to sit and watch the eyesore that this project has become, they now want to add 5-story condos to the project and have a giant monolith of a wall surrounding our complex and blocking all of our views. While I do want to see the hotel built, I do urge you to reject the changes they've made. When they originally proposed this development, there was supposed to be green spaces, there was supposed to be an event space for the neighborhood to use, and some semblance of the mountains for us to view. In this new development, all of that's gone. It's replaced by a giant hulking wall that doesn't really fit the neighborhood or any of its surroundings. So I do ask you again to please reject this current iteration and make them build what they originally proposed, or give the land back to the city or someone who can build something more in line with the neighborhood. Somebody who will actually make sure that what they say will actually get built. I feel like this project has become a total bait and switch for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, my name is Thomas Boudreau. May I speak?
Chair, are we going to take the comments on the 2C during 2C, or is that the opportunity now? I figured it was a public hearing.
You have the choice on 2C to make your comments now or to make them during the public hearing on 2C.
Okay, I thought it was appropriate to go for under the item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, my name is Thomas Boudreau.
Yes.
May I speak?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Members of the Planning Commission, I'm here to comment on the revised condominium plans adjacent to the Dream Hotel. in the staff report that you received for today's hearing. And I'm not here to complain. I'm here to appeal to your common sense and appeal to your gut regarding what's right and what's wrong. My front door sits on the northeast corner of the condo development site that was originally called the Plateau and is now referenced as the North Villas. I live in a one-story unit at the Center Court Club, and like all of the other units along that property line, my building measures 9 feet 3 inches from the ground to the roof line. Truth and disclosure, there is a decorative peak that adds 4 additional feet. So let's say a maximum height of 13.3 feet. The initial condo development plans took into account the immediate neighborhood and conformed to a realistic scale in relation to the surrounding buildings. The currently approved condos on the northeast corner range from 25.8 feet to 37.9 feet in height. The newly proposed condo structures requiring a private elevator to make them tenable reach a staggering height of 52 feet and stretch further along the northeast property line than originally proposed. Significant green space has also been scuttled. A height of 52 feet is not in keeping with the neighborhood character as referenced in the original plans. The revision maximizes profits to the detriment of the poor schmucks who live on the other side of the wall. That's me and my neighbors. This is where the proposed revisions collide with common sense, right and wrong, and the community's best interests. The original 2- and 3-story condos made sense. Anything that requires a personal elevator to be tenable is simply too high in the context of the buildings that currently exist. This is a permanent imposition that cannot be erased. I appreciate your commitment to serving the committee as members of the Planning Commission. I ask that you exercise your long-term planning capacity to benefit the community as a whole, not just the developer. Please consider the current residents and the inappropriate height of the revised condo plans in your decision-making. I ask that you instruct the developer to lower the finished height of the proposed condominiums to be in proportion with the surroundings before approving the plan. And I thank you for allowing me to make this appeal.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Mr. Newell, who wishes to speak?
No, Madam Chair, we have no other requests to speak at this time.
The hearing is
I would
closed.
like to speak. Okay,
Fine.
may I speak?
Yes,
Yes, hi. Good evening, commissioners, and I thank you for your service. My name is Louis Barinello. I am the president of Center Court HOA. I know you have received many letters from our residents regarding our objection to the change in the project. I want to make it clear, we are not objecting to the hotel. We have supported the hotel since its inception. And I will go on record as saying the developer was accommodating to many of our concerns. What is of particular concern to the residents of this development, we're a small development. We're 20 condos. Many of us are full-time residents. The hotel, a 4- and 5-story structure, obliterates much of our view. However, we went along with that because the developer was sensitive to our needs and did move the hotel back from the original plan. There were plans a couple of years ago for developments on the northwest side of the complex. They were supposed to be single-story condos in a cluster of 4 or 5. The intended use was for wedding parties or executive conferencing where there would be individual units and then a common space for business to be conducted. Somehow that changed to now 4-story structures. I know it has been stated, well, there are 3 stories on a platform. Well, a platform is a garage, which means the structures are 4 stories. They're directly opposite our west wall, feet from the west wall. the latest change on the southeast corner of the property went from a green usable space, event space, for both the communities used for weddings, parties, whatever, a green space that was going to be no more than 1 story and possibly a little bit subterranean and built up. That has changed now, and I think that's the focus of this meeting, to 4-story structures, 24 4-story condominiums in that corner. 24 4-story condominiums on one corner, a hotel encasing the rest of the complex, and 24 stories on the other corner totally encapsulates us. Totally. And whatever views we had enjoyed here are totally obliterated. Yes, the hotel is now split in design, so there is an open space between them. But what I'd like to know is what the addition of that 24 units now on the southeast corner, how does that benefit the community? How does that benefit the convention center? The intent of the hotel originally was to provide a high-end hotel for convention use and for the community. We have no issue with the hotel. We do have
Sir,
tremendous
we're past
issues.
3 minutes.
Okay, I thank you for your time. I really hope the committee, the commissioners are sensitive to our little development here.
Well, Chair, if you're going for the next one, I may as well do it now instead of waiting until get us all together, if that's okay, Chair.
Of course.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is David Powell, homeowner at 355 Avenida Caballeros. Frankly, I can't believe we're back at this again with more amendments and modifications to this site that has had no movement, has sat vacant, and has been an eyesore for over 4 years. There has been no communication with the developer about the change of the scope of this project, even though she apparently lives next door. Her statements about needing more condos to make the project financially viable is not our concern. I think back to when it was proposed as a hotel to serve the convention center that was also intended to host high-end executives. Then it evolved into a mixed-use hotel with high-cost condo units. Then it was redesigned to take advantage of the mountain views to serve the guests of the new hotel and condos while limiting the mountain views of the local residents, primarily the homeowners and residents of Center Court. Now this project has evolved again to create additional multiple level condos that will further impede the views of the neighbors. I request that while the existing part of the project with the hotel should continue, the other new components of the 4-story condos should either be returned to the previously approved plan or limit them to 2 stories at most. This is in contradiction to the current plan is in contradiction to the section 14 specific plan that in chapter 2 talks about view corridors and quote, the view of the majestic San Jacinto Mountains constitutes the most defining and striking features. Retaining these views of the mountains will help to enhance the quality of the environment and experience in section 14. However, the concerns of the neighbors have not seemed to be of much concern in any previous meetings. Staff's conclusion is that the proposed amended project will generally maintain the same architectural vernacular as was previously envisioned and approved. That is from the initial entitlement back in 2007. Different plans are submitted and approved. Thus, those are what should be focused on. It also says that there's no need for further environmental review, again, basing it on the neg deck from 2007. This is outdated as obviously development in the area has grown greatly. Even then, a sitting planning commissioner stated in the 2007 email that the mitigated neg deck is smoke and mirrors. There are numerous errors and false photo exhibits, and he outlines a few of them. It also stated that the development will have significant effect on views from their surrounding properties. While he noted the hotel is needed, but the 2 high condos is unacceptable. The latest iteration of additional condos will contribute to that. Finally, staff's conclusion is that most importantly, the amended project is still in compliance with all of the development and design standards as the previous PDD and tentative track map approval, with the exception of the north and south villas with higher heights. Well, that's true. This conclusion is based on the original entitlement again, and not the numerous approved iterations since. Yet at this point, the primary concern is the height of the 2 new sets of condos that will impede the neighbors and the neighborhood. In addition, the new site plan includes surface parking, when in the past it was always told that parking for the condos and hotel would be underground. This will also have an effect with the neighbors. I request that the changes be made by the developer to dramatically lessen the height of these new structures prior to it being sent to City Council for approval. And it's good to see everyone, especially those who were here the last time we've been through this, and hopefully we won't have to be there again. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak? Mr. Newell?
No other requests, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. Moving on to item 1, the consent calendar. It's the approval of the minutes of April 13th, 2022, a regular meeting, and July 27th, 2022, a study session. And before, is there anybody who needs to pull either of those items?
Well, I have some changes,
I want to get to the.
Which of the 2 items?
both.
Both. And I have some changes as well. So shall we take the regular meeting minutes first? And if we can, what I'll do is if we can incorporate the changes that people are requesting, then we'll go ahead with a general vote on these. And if not, we'll take them separately. Commissioner Marucci?
On the near the bottom of page 3, it talks about sign A and sign B. There's no indication of what sign A or sign B are. So it'd be nice to, if the Mi Casa, Su Casa is sign A, then that should be identified and so forth. So somebody reading this in the future will know what we're talking about. And then I have comments on the other one. Should I wait?
No, does any, with those, I think we can't approve them and they should go back to staff to identify what the signs are. Unless you can do that now.
While we're looking at other changes, we might pull that up quickly and see if we can do that now.
Thank you. And then the second, the meeting minutes.
Yeah, on the near the bottom of page 2 on those, it talks about some things that I asked Commissioner Marucci. But then the last sentence is planner line confirmed that is correct. But I actually had 2 questions, 1 and 3. So I don't know if that referred to both. The bottom of page 2, there are many questions that Commissioner Hirschbein asked, but there really aren't any staff responses that are noted. I think that if there were staff responses, I think they should be included here.
Are there
What's
additional
Yes.
comments?
Middle of page 3, it's just a typo. It says Commissioner Mersey questioned legal noticing for the prior general plan designations. I think it should have said questioned whether legal noticing for the prior general plan designations had occurred. That's what I was questioning. Oh, and actually the top of page 3, I don't think there was an answer for that one either, about Commissioner Elayan's questions.
And I have one, which was, it says, she requested additional materials be provided to show a compliant project with the golf course conversion. And what I actually said was I wanted, when this came back, I wanted them to provide an alternate to what they had given to us that was a compliant project. So it wasn't additional materials, it was a compliant project. Commissioner Hirschbein.
Can we ask that these come back to us? Because this is too much to digest and rip it quickly so we can move on.
Right, I think with this particular hearing, it would actually be good if staff listened to the tape and then responded and corrected this. So there's a motion that we table these until a date certain, which would be our next meeting.
And I'd second that.
I found if there's no other changes to the April 13th minutes, I do have what sign references there were from the staff report.
If you could give those to us, we can possibly deal with that this
Sure.
time.
Sure, so sign A was both sign A and B were both on the porte cochere fascias. Sign A is the sign that was facing south and was identified as Mi Casa y Su Casa. And then sign B was the one on the curved portion of the porte cochere with the text, changes in latitude, changes in attitude.
And can, when we refer to that in the changes you make with this, will you refer to exactly what the sign is that got approved?
Yes, we can make that change before we finalize these minutes.
Thank you. So with those changes, Commissioner Marucci, are you comfortable?
Absolutely. And I make a motion that we approve it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And on the study session minutes,
Chair, I was absent on the 15th, I believe it was, of April.
the 7th, I think this is the
13th?
13th.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't here, so.
So you'll abstain. So you'll record his abstention. On the study session minutes, we had a motion from myself to bring these back at our next regular meeting.
And I
With,
second that. Seconded that.
okay, and that the date on our next regular meeting is, if you want a date certain, if you can.
September 28th.
So it would return on September 28th with corrections. Can I have all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Okay, moving right along into our public hearings. The next item we're going to take up is 2C. Celine Palm Springs LLC for an amendment to the previously approved final development plans and tentative track map 35236 to include an additional 24 condominium units on the southeast section of the site, reconfigure the 12 condominium units at the northeast area of the site, increase the number of tower condominium units from 28 to 29, and make minor modifications to the final landscape plans of the Dream Hotel located on the northwest corner of Avenida Caballeros and Amato Road. Staff report, please.
Sure. So just wanted to give good evening. Just wanted to give some brief remarks before Edward delivers the staff report. As you all know, I'm sure much better than me, this project has a lengthy history and a close relationship with the city. I appreciate that many of you have reviewed this in different capacities, so I just wanted to briefly state what is before the Planning Commission tonight. This project does have existing entitlements and development rights. Tonight, the Planning Commission is reviewing proposed amendments to the approved final development plans and the tentative tract map for what essentially amounts to 3 items. The first, the addition of 24 condominium units at the southeast section of the site in the location that had been previously identified as event space. The second is the reconfiguration of the 12 previously approved condominium units on the northern portion of the site into 2 buildings. And finally, an internal adjustment to the previously approved residential tower that would see an increase of 1 condominium unit from 28 to 29 total units in that location. Edward will elaborate on these changes as well as the project history in more detail when he goes into the report. But I also wanted to indicate for the Commission's consideration that there are parallel conversations occurring between the operator and the city regarding 2 agreements that will establish both the performance schedule for permitting, construction, opening, and financial obligations, as well as the operations of the hotel. And I know that these are sensitive items for the community as well as yourselves. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that those conversations are occurring with the city and the city council and will be discussed, we believe, in parallel with the changes that are proposed here, should you all decide to advance the application to the city council. So those conversations are occurring in parallel and will occur with the city council when they do consider this item, should you advance it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Edward to provide more details, but just wanted to give it.
Before we get there, just a little bit more in purview. The development rights on this are vested, correct?
That's correct. They are vested.
And so what is before us is a review of the proposed changes, which is what we can take action on, and we can approve or suggest modifications. Our actions are not final, is that correct?
Sorry,
change.
Yes, that's correct.
Would be a referral to city council?
Correct.
And if we approve changes, those changes would go on to the architectural review committee. But would they go after they go to council or before?
This will go to the architectural review committee after council. That's correct, Edward?
Yeah, that's correct. So.
Okay, so that's what's before us tonight.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Director Christopher. So, Madam Chair, good evening, and members of the Planning Commission. But before I start, I would love to share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Not yet, Edward.
You've got two things up.
Oh, really? How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. So before I proceed, I just want to give you a very brief background on this project. And as you all know, and as members of the immediate community have mentioned, this project was initially entitled in 2007. And at that time, the City Council adopted a mitigation declaration and approved the project for a 200-room hotel and a 143-unit condominium complex. But at that time, the project did not move forward. So the applicant came back again, and since that time, there have been 6 major amendments to the project. A major amendment is when the proposed amendment will have to come before you and to the City Council. In 2017, there was another amendment made to the project that reduced the number of hotel rooms from 200 to 170, and then the number of residential units also changed at that time. And then again, in 2019, another amendment came before you. That was for the reduction of the hotel rooms from 170 to 156 and increase the number of condominium units from 35 to 40. But the case before you tonight, the application before you tonight is an amendment to the approved plan development district, an amendment to the tentative tract map. Here's the scope of review of the item before you. Number one, you have to look at the proposed change of use. In other words, the change of use of the amenity on the southeast of the section of the site, changing it from a farmhouse and event center to a residential use, which will result to changes in the site plan. And again, you have to look at the modifications that is being proposed to the tract map, because the applicant now want to create 3 lots from the original 2 and 3 lettered lots. Following your action, the project will go before the City Council for review, following the recommendation of the Planning Commission. And then it will go back to the ARC that will review the final architecture, the design, materials, and colors. So what is before the changes again are, number one, the applicant is proposing to eliminate the farmhouse or the event center that is located on the southeast section of the center. And in this place, there will be a 24-unit condominium structure known as the South Villas. And then on the northwest of the site, the formerly structure known as the Plateau, which was a 12-unit condominium structure, is being changed. Now, all they are doing in this place is reconfiguring and rebuilding that structure. It will maintain the 12 units as was originally approved. And finally, the hotel tower, which originally contained 28 units, will be reconfigured internally to 29, which will then increase the number of condominium units from 40 to 65 total. The hotel itself will remain at 156 units. There will be no change to the hotel tower or the footprint, but there will be changes to the heights of the two condominiums, both the south and the north villas. So this is an aerial of the previous approval. As you can see, is the hotel, which is very recognizable, and then the plateau. This is the approved plan. And then back here is where the event center and the farmhouse was supposed to be. This is the site plan that's before you. This is what you are considering tonight. And as mentioned earlier, this is where the plateau was located. It is now being revised, although it will still contain 12 units, but it will be a 4-story high and a 52 feet high maximum. This is the condo tower, which originally had 28 units or residential units. That is being reconfigured internally, which would change the number of units from 28 to 29. And on to the southeast section of it is the proposed condominium structure that will contain 24 units. This will be built on a podium and it will have 4 stories. There will be parking underneath that podium. I will go more into that as I show you the exhibits. So this is a comparison of what is before you. To my left or to the left of the screen and to the right is the previously approved, the 2019 approved site plan. Again, you have the individual condominium units. There was 5 of them to the north of the site. And again, to the southeast, it's where the farmhouse and the event center was located. And in its place, there will be the 24-unit condos known as the South Villas. So the question that was asked of the applicant is, if you are eliminating the event center from the southeast section of the site, where will the event spaces be? So here are the potential locations of where event spaces will be. There are meeting rooms on the ground floor of the hotel tower itself. So that's where a majority of the event spaces will be relocated. And as I mentioned earlier, you are also being asked to review and approve the changes to the tentative tract map. So it does have 3 lettered lots, which are all meant for streets improvements. And then lot 1 will be for the hotel, lot 2 for the north villas, and lot 3 will be for the south villas. These are the floor plans of the north villas. This is how they will look like now. It does have all the units will have their own separate parking spaces on the basement. And this is the 2nd floor. This is the 3rd floor and the 4th floor of the floor plans. These are all contained in the materials that are before you.
Edward, when you said basement, you're not literally saying a basement, you're saying the 1st floor podium?
Exactly, so that's correct, Madam Chair. And here are the North Villas elevation. So I will go back as I go on, I will show you the elevation of the previously approved plateau. And these are the renderings of the North Villas. This will be the entrance into the development here. And this is just another rendering of the North Villas. So these are the floor plans of the South Villas, which is replacing the event center and the farmhouse area. This will be the parking area, and then this to the right, the first floor plans. This will be the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor plans. And this will be the elevations of the South Villa. So this will be the renderings. This will be looking at the rendering from the southeast corner of Avenida Caballeros. And you're looking at it from Amado. This is the portion of it that you could see. You don't have the landscape plan before you today, but that will be coming back to you and to the ARC in the future because there are changes being made to the site to the landscape plans as well. So these are the section drawing. The reason I'm presenting this to you is to see what the setback plans, the setbacks that are being proposed are relative to the height of the building. So here, this section represents the structures at the center court community. And this is the new proposed structure. There is a proposed setback that ranges from 100 to 120 foot setback. And of course, there will be all kinds of landscaping that will help to minimize the impact of the structure here. That will come back to you in more details in future. So this is the previously approved renderings of the plateau at the north, which is now called North Villas. This is the previously approved plans that you approved way back in 2019. And this is the site plan that you approved way back in 2013. And as you can see, back then, this South Villas was previously approved also for residential use, and you have more residencies to the north at that time. And the reason I'm bringing this before you was that even the original CEQA document that you certified in 2007 and the subsequent amendments all actually analyzed this use back then. And that also included the addendum that was made to the MND in 2017. So this is the 2013 approved plan. And as you can see, this would be the residential structure that was previously approved, but then was amended again in 2019 to include, to have the farmhouse and the event center. To the north, there was always the plan to have residential development there. The only difference, and as I indicated in the site plan, in your staff report, is the proposed height this time around. So the staff report does contain the original conditions plus all the amended conditions over the years, but the report before you today does include two new conditions of approval. The first one has to do with pad elevations, which requires that the pad elevation must be consistent with what you approved originally. And if there's going to be any deviation from that, which might affect the height, has to come back to you. The second condition is PLN 29 that has to do with electric vehicle charging station, which requires the development to install EV charging stations in the development. Staff recommendation at this time is that the Planning Commission to approve the tentative tract map and recommend approval of the PDD amendment to the City Council subject to conditions that are before you or any additional conditions that the Planning Commission may deem necessary for this project. Is this a public hearing? That concludes staff report. If there is any question, staff will be available to answer those. The applicant is also in attendance to make a presentation to you. Madam Chair, that will conclude my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, if you can take that down, I would like to entertain questions of staff. And Commissioner Hertzstein has his hand up, and then Commissioner Vice Chair Roberts.
Thank you. I just have one question of staff. Are we to review the changes to this plan in relation to the last approved plan, or all of the iterations before that as shown to us?
No, it is the one that is being made to the last approved, to the last amended plan. That's the one.
So basically, we should ignore all the previously approved plans and just focus on the last approved plan. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Edward.
Hi, how you doing, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Edward, do you have sections or sight lines from the previously approved plan showing us what you just showed us from the condos behind?
I can go back and look for those, but I don't have them on my presentation tonight, but I can go back and look for those.
So my understanding is in the if I'm reading these plans right, is that in the previously approved plans, the condos behind had clear views over what was originally going to be the event space, right? Do you know what the height was of the event space?
Yes, so the maximum height of the event space was 37 thereabout feet, not as high as what is being proposed at this point.
So the event space was at about 37.
Correct.
And what's being proposed today is 42 or
So,
something.
yeah, correct.
So
So from the podium will be 44 feet high.
40. Okay, so we're going from 37 to 44 in
That's
height.
correct. Correct.
On the condos on the north side, that increase goes from what to what?
Goes from, so those were 2 stories and 3 stories. The 3 stories were going to be 37.9. So it's going from 37.9 to 52 feet in height.
39 to 52.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have at this time.
Are there other questions of staff? Commissioner Elaine?
Thanks. I had a couple of questions, but first of all, that last answer kind of confused me. My staff report shows that the previous event space was approved at 24 feet, not 37 feet. And that it's going from 24 feet to 44 feet. Maybe Edward, you can clarify?
Yeah, let me take a quick look at my table.
And yeah, that's where I was pulling it off of the table in the staff report.
Yes, you are right. So the farmhouse and event house has a maximum height of 24 feet 2 inches to 44. So it is the north villa that is 38, not the south villas.
Okay.
Yes.
The first question I have is, I think for Mr. Priest, the Celine project, the Dream Hotel, is one of the handful, 4 or 5 hotel projects around town that have been termed, for lack of any better terms, stalled projects or stalled hotel projects. And the city was, and the city attorney's office was getting involved in looking at those projects and communicating with the developers what was required for them to do in order to keep their entitlements in place. Can you tell us what was done with this particular project, and would the proposed would approval of the staff recommendation here satisfy all of those issues so that this project was and the developer back in good standing?
What I can do, thank you, Commissioner, Madam Chair. What I can tell you is echoing what the director had mentioned earlier, that there are parallel discussions going on with the city and the city council concerning getting this project moving again, getting it on a schedule, operating parameters. Those discussions are ongoing. This entitlement amendment is consistent with moving forward with those discussions. That's really all I can say about that. But this is part of the bigger picture and what the developer is pursuing. And then ultimately we'll be asking the council for some sort of amended operating and development agreement consistent. At least that's what the applicant is seeking here. That said, I'll echo the director's comments and indicate that your mandate this evening is limited to the land uses, impacts thereof, and whether you can make the findings and render a decision on this PDD amendment. That is specifically your mandate this evening. It's things concerning how the hotel will operate, tax matters, any other construction or operation schedules. Those are things that would be handled by any ultimate agreement that would go to council.
Okay, thank you. And the only other question I had was the schedule of building permits and business licenses that is in the staff report indicates that in October of 2018, the applicant applied for a building permit for the building shell, the above grade portion. Was that permit ever issued? Is that?
I would refer to staff on that one. I can't.
What happened with that?
I have to defer that to the applicant because the staff at the building department are gone for the day. At the time of the staff report, that was the only information I was able to retrieve from our system. Whether that permit was issued or not, I do not have that information at this point.
Okay.
It's also entirely possible that if the building permit had been initially issued, it could have expired because of the project.
Correct. Correct.
Yes, I would gather so. But I was just curious. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yeah, thank you. In the environmental analysis portion of the staff report, it states that in 2017, for secret purposes, another initial study was conducted. So does that address the concern that the neighbors have raised that there was only one environmental report in 2007 when there actually was another one in 2017?
So what was done in 2017 is called an addendum to the MND. But at that time, we had asked our consultant to consider all the same issues that we would normally consider in an original initial study. So all of those, such as traffic, hydrology, aesthetics, noise, those were all analyzed at the same time.
But then there was no subsequent one for the 2019 changes, nor for the current request.
No, because as we say in CEQA, there is no expiration date on CEQA documents, so that 2017 is still regarded as a CEQA controlling document.
Staff concludes on page 15, it says, the proposed architectural design standards of the added condominium buildings are an improvement over the original proposal. What is your reasoning for that?
So number one, because of the materials and going back and looking at the plateau, and that's just my own generic review. And that's a very cursory preliminary review that hasn't gone before the ARC. They may have a difference of opinion and they will be the one making the final call. But that was just based upon the review of this very preliminary design that was presented to us.
I'm sorry. That seems a little... I don't know what the term is. I mean, it says reviewed by Christopher Hadwin. That seems to be unfair because he hasn't really been here long enough to have made a judgment, I think, on the improvement of the architectural design standards. So we'll just have to take that as your opinion, and that's fine. I had questions about whatever action the city had taken in terms of litigation for not moving forward with the project, but I guess that's all under consideration, discussion, et cetera, with the city council. And you can't release that. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out.
Are there other questions? Commissioner Hirschman?
Yeah, just to follow up on the height differences that Vice Chair Roberts was bringing up. Another component of view corridors is the distance to the height. So now we know it was 24, not 37 feet. for the event space. But in addition, how far away is the event space from the units versus how far away is the condo building from the units?
It is still between 100 and let me go back and go back to mine. Between 100 and 124, thereabout. That's
the current proposal, right?
correct. Yes.
And then how far away was the event space?
It's because of the height difference. So I'm assuming that it would have been higher for the event space to the center court structure.
No, I'm not talking about the height.
Yeah, I'm talking about the distance, right?
How far away is the event space from the units? You said it's 124 feet in the current proposal, but the previously approved one, how far away was the event space?
I do not have that figure before me. As I mentioned to the vice chair earlier, I do not have the.
Can you measure that? We'll take other questions.
Okay, and the other one relates to the north villas. You said the north villas were a certain height. I think you said 44.
No, 37.9 would be the highest one.
37.9. But again, the 37.9, let's see, I'm getting myself mixed up here. I'm sorry. Closest to in the previous approval, the units closest to the center court were only 2-story units. The 3-story units were set further back, whereas the current proposal has the full height units in the most, as close to the center court as the 2-story units in the approved concept design. Do you get what I'm saying?
So is your question that the previous approval had a greater setback from center court to the? Is that your question, sir?
No, the point is that the taller the height that you quoted for the previously approved condo is the part that's set further back from the center court. The units that are closest to the center court are only 2 stories.
In the previous approval.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, thank you.
So I have some questions, and can you get us those measurements and those previous drawings while we get into the public hearing? The public mentioned that the parking, and that's my memory, that the parking was originally going to be underground for the condos. And at this point, the parking is above ground. Can you confirm that? And can you explain it?
So can I go back and share my screen with you?
Yes.
Yes, so. Okay, so okay, let me show you these floor plans right here.
Yeah, because I don't think there was a parking analysis in our staff report.
Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, the parking are all internal and all interior. These are all the parking spaces for the not villas. So they are not surface parking. So that was not, and as I mentioned, there are 12 condo units. There are 2 parking spaces per unit. There are 24 parking spaces and 3 guest parking area right here.
Right.
And then
I see that. My question is more of a parking analysis. In the previous proposal, because I think we should have had that, what was the parking? What was required? What's currently required? Is the parking garage? I thought the parking garage was large enough to.
Yes, yeah, so
And so the question is, why a podium with parking adding to the height? And why isn't this being parked below ground?
okay.
And on the other side, on the south condos, why is it ground parking as opposed to underneath? Subterranean.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, going back to page 5 of the staff report at that table, so the parking analysis is there. So there is the previous parking provided in 2019 was 289. The total parking this time around is 227. So, and this is for the North Villas. Going to the South Villas, the same thing that.
Page 5, I'm looking.
Yes, on the table that compares the 2019 approved project to the proposed amendment.
Okay, so they need, and what do they have below grade?
Below grade on the hotel or for the condo units?
Below grade, what is the total below grade parking? And I guess my question is why didn't staff require that parking to be below grade?
So what was proposed to us is on a podium and to be parked beneath the condominium unit. But if that's the condition that the planning commission, the direction the planning commission want to go, we can have the applicant do those.
And so for below grade, they have the parking spaces, do they have, what is the total parking, not what's required, but what they currently have?
They have 289, which is the project is always been overpacked, but we do require additional parking spaces for residential uses.
So some of those units could be parked below grade.
I will have the applicant respond to that if they will have access to the.
I'm asking you, what's the parking required for the new residential or for the residential, and how much of it, is there any, it looks to me like at least some portion of it, maybe 2/3 of it could be parked below grade.
That's correct. So they do meet their required parking. Each unit does have two parking spaces.
I'm looking at height issues. And one of the reasons we have the height issues is that we have a parking podium that may not be necessary. So that's really what I'm asking is, maybe you can give me the number of spaces that are required for the north condo units, which are the ones that have the parking podium.
Correct. So that will require for each unit, so it will require 24 for the residential use and additional 3 for guest parking spaces.
Okay, that begins to answer my question. The second one is a question regarding the event space. You showed us 2 spaces where event space would go, but weren't those spaces that were available before, they're not replacement spaces? The one in the tower and the one in the hotel?
That's correct. They've always been part of the hotel spaces for meetings and other event spaces.
So we haven't added new event spaces, we just are utilizing previous event spaces.
Correct. That's according to the applicant.
Okay, and then for the neighbors, when this was being presented to the neighbors, often when we have height issues, we do story poles, certified story poles. Were story poles done for the neighbors in this instance?
No, it wasn't. It was not asked for, so staff did not ask have the applicant do that.
Thank you. I think those are my questions. Commissioner Maruzzi has additional questions.
There's just one question here regarding the height of the South Villas. looking at the plans that say SK3, and they have a roof height of 50 feet for the South Villas, but on page 5 of the staff report, I think it says 44 feet. So I'm a little confused. Am I not reading this right?
No. So going back to this exhibit, I'm showing it it is 44 feet from the finished grade and 50 feet from the platform. So as you can see here in the circled area, you see where this arrow begins to the very top? Yeah, that gives you 50 feet. But from the finished grade here is 44. And that this exhibit is also containing the package that you have.
So there's 6 feet above grade and whatever below grade. So it's up. How much of this platform is above ground? Above grade?
So from what I can say here, it is 6. So you see my cursor from here, that's where the 50 feet starts. And this is where the grade starts. That's where the 44 feet is taken.
Okay, it's curious because if you look at SK3, it says roof 50 feet. Doesn't make a distinction between platform or anything else. It just says 50 feet.
So and that's where the section drawings comes in. So right here, where
Well, look at SK3. I know what you're saying about this section drawing, but you have this document that you included, so I'm just trying to understand this one. All of the elevations say 50 feet. It doesn't look like it's measured from the platform. It says first floor 0 feet. And then it says roof 50 feet. So it's not exactly as you're describing in the other section drawing.
Commissioner Amirisi, all I can say here is go by the section drawings that staff reviewed, and this is what is showing. And so we can take another look at it, but I'm looking at it here.
It's kind of important actually, because I think this is one of the main concerns of the neighbors. If it's 40 feet or 44 feet or 50 feet, looks to me like in this SK3, it's 50 feet, and you're not really refuting that. So you're saying, well, I should look at just at the section drawings and not at this. I don't exactly know how to respond to that. Deal with it.
We can take that up in discussion, Commissioner Maruzzi. I don't think we need a. Commissioner Miller, is that a hand or?
It is, yeah. And I'm going to pick up on what Commissioner Maruzzi just brought up on SK3. And I don't want to belabor this. I know that you want to move on, but there seems to be an error on those plans in how the heights are referenced. If you look at second floor, third floor, there's about 12.5 feet from floor to floor, but then it jumps up 25 feet from the third floor to the roof, and the horizontal dashed lines depicting the height are equidistant from floors 1 through 4. So there's an error in the notation on plan SK3 to jump from 25 feet at the third floor to 50 feet on the roof, and showing no difference in the horizontal distance between them. It's not to scale, if we are to believe that 50 feet is accurate. So that's what's further confusing to me on that elevation drawing SK3.
I'm going to take another look at that and perhaps ask the applicant to shed more light on that. The reason I asked for a section drawing is to provide clearer picture of what the height is. So I'm going by the section drawing. So there may have been, I'm not going to speak for the applicant. I will let them speak on that, but I'm going by the section drawings, and it is showing 44 and 50 feet.
We can come back to this. Just before we get into the public hearings, perhaps if you don't have time, somebody on staff, Mr. Newell, can help you find the sight lines from the 2019 plans. So that
I'm gonna be working on that while comments are ongoing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
At this point, there being no more questions of staff, the public hearing is open. The applicant has 10 minutes. Is the applicant here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, Madam Chair. There's a lot of information brought up that I want to answer, and I also had some things I wanted to make sure that you heard about. Just so you know, some of you have worked with me a long, long time, so I am as frustrated, have been as frustrated as many of you in seeing this come back over and over again. However, we've always been responding to the market. In regards to our neighbors and their comments, their concerns are always paramount in our discussions with the architect. And we have made every effort, as we did on the hotel, being 170 feet back from the line, to do the same with the condominiums and the design of them, and to make terracing, to include in our planning, to landscape those terraces, to ensure that nobody is looking at a big blank wall, and to allow for a lot of landscaping between the two so that, in fact, it remains green. If you remember correctly, when the event space was there, we had, I'm not sure, I think it was 50 parallel parking, tandem parking spaces along that road, along with a road, which is no longer being utilized in that way. And we have made sure that the entrance is off Caballeros to ensure that they are not disturbed by the cars for those residents. In addition to the comment that was recently made about the garage is submerged and only 6 feet of it is above grade. That way we address as much as we could the height, the cost, and we are driven by some of the cost. The cost of doing a fully submerged garage is extraordinary and starts to put the pricing of things, so I know that's not your concern, but it is for ours as a developer, out of sync with what the market can bear. The north end, and we are building this project as a luxury project, the north end was redesigned in that we could not have people parking in the garage under the hotel and walking through the grounds of the hotel to their condominiums. It doesn't make any sense. And we had all kinds of parking on the surface to address that in the previous plan. And we have now addressed it by building a podium that is enclosed, including over the top, filtered light, with a garden such that they have their own garages, which are garages, not just parking spots, with elevators. The previous design also had private elevators to each of their units. So that is not anything new. It is taller because we have tried to make them more luxury, and we separated the buildings so that there was an open gardened area, allowing for more airflow and more better gardened luxury experience. There is a lot, it's an 8-acre site. There is a lot of green space on that site. The proposed new place for the event center, if you will, or the meeting area, is a very large, already planned for outdoor event space. And now we're taking that section of the building and including it with meeting rooms and auditorium, if you will, space to ensure that we've replaced what we're taking away. So that's kind of my responses to what I've heard so far. We are building a luxury condominium and luxury hotel product. Our conversations with the city has required additional residential. This is in response to that. I'm not sure what is confidential or not. I didn't know anything of it was confidential, though I do know they do their sessions in closed session. But we have been asked to include and expand our residential, so we have done so. To what I wanted to talk about, because there's a lot of concern about the project having been stopped over the last number of years. We were stopped originally, I think late 2018, because of our general contractor not paying their subcontractors. And it took us into COVID to actually settle all those claims. And I think you have the dollar amount. It was quite a bit of money. And we have one outstanding claim with the general contractor, which we believe is completely bogus for the concrete contractor. And we have bonded around that so that we can move the project forward. And we maintain that bond so that we are unencumbered by that. We have started up again in design. We have engaged our engineering, some of the engineering on the civil, our architect, and are moving the project forward. Once we have approvals, we know what we're able to build. We will be going, updating our civil work and starting the civil work. The plan is to start the civil work towards the end of November. We think we can get through council, generally speaking, with a number of unit count, et cetera, so that we know what we need to do for our, offsites and onsites and loads, and be able to start the civil work. Civil work is about 7 months. The plan is to take those 7 months and complete all the construction drawings. There was a question earlier about our core and shell. We did submit for permit. We went through, I think, 5 or 6 rounds of comments on core and shell. We never had the same engineer. So we were constantly bombarded with previous questions that should have been brought up previously. So we've determined that we're going to submit a full set of drawings, not only core and shell, but the entire set of drawings in this round, which will be completed during this next, during the civil work. So that when we pull the permit, it will just construct everything. We have certain constraints by the city as to when we can get C of O on the various elements of the project based on the hotel being built as well. So I think that, let's see, I wanted to let you know, because there's always a conversation in the community about our lending. We cannot secure construction financing until we are at least 80% through a set of drawings, and we have a GMP that we can count on that's within 10% of what we think the final budget will be. Our goal is to get there through this next several months while we're doing civil work and have the financing secured by the time that we can start, which, to be very honest, is going to be somewhere around June of next year. If we are able to start at the end of November on civil work, it'll take us the 6 or 7 months that I indicated. We're required to do that because all of the general contractors that we've talked with, the site is very constrained given the layout. And we either can build a project and then do civil work, which makes it much more difficult, but we cannot do both at the same time. So we're going to do civil work first and then build the project from there. Let's see. There's also a subject about, I was questioned prior to this meeting about, do we have the funds? I don't know if you've disclosed, but we certainly gave you the amount of millions of dollars that have been spent to date, and we expect that we'll spend as much as $12 million over the next 7 months, not only to do the civil work, which is in the $5 or $6 million range, but also to complete architecture and all the engineering. Let me see, what else did I want to bring up? Again, I think most important to our neighbors, the 120 feet back from the property line on the southeast condominiums does allow for, it doesn't have all of the view. I am also impacted. I live right next door to Center Court, and I know that it's impacted, but it does not obliterate the views. And we have spent a lot of time looking at view quarters. We've kept the view quarter that was always promised through at the end of the hotel between whatever we would build on that southeast corner. And we have kept, if I'm not mistaken, and I do have the architect on the line as well as the owner's rep who's doing all the financing, if you have any questions of them. We've tried to make it such that we're not moving any closer than what was previously approved. And if we can, we have moved back, i.e. if you've seen the layered effect on those condominiums, we've tried to make sure that the top height is as far back as possible. We also did away with the drop off on Amato, which allowed us to move that entire condominium project south, closer to the road, because we don't have the drop off area. So we've made a lot of accommodation in the design. I think throughout this whole process, we have always listened to our neighbors and have done our best to try to accommodate them. But we are building within the PD that, and the constraints of that site, what was originally allowed there, both from heights and densities. And in fact, we have reduced it dramatically from the original intention of 200 and 150 condominiums. So I think I wasn't sure if I could get through all of this, but I think that's kind of most of what I wanted to address. In regards to the parking, we, for both units, we're overparked on the southeast corner. We have 2 parking spaces for each unit, plus we have 20 additional units. We have not reduced the parking in the hotel, but if you remember correctly, way back in the beginning, the city wanted to make sure that anybody who was attending the convention center would have access to our parking. So we are limited to valet only for that garage. And that we have not changed anything with that garage. So that is still available. We have worked hard originally on the access at the Amato Alvarado corner to ensure that there's access for the residents to take advantage of both the restaurants, which sit in a large open green spaces. So we have not taken that away from the community. It is unfortunate that when people are happy and pleased to get what is coming, that they don't show up at these meetings, but that none of that has changed. And we intend to still build a beautiful luxury style product. And given the interest that we've had in the condominiums, we believe that there is a lot of demand for what we are building. So I thank you for listening. And both myself, Iran, and the architectural crew is here if you have any questions, any of us.
Questions of the applicant? And this will, please stay here. And if people would like to hear from the architect as well, or the financer. Are there any questions? I have one, which is how you intend to utilize the hotel without the additional public spaces you had. That's a question. Have you changed anything in the front of the hotel, in the entry, in the gardens, in the pool area? Is that all the same? Are there any changes?
Well, there's going to be some modification to the landscaping, but effectively, no. All of that area where the pool is, where the front lobby outdoor area is, where how the restaurant sits and relates to all of those outdoor spaces remains the same.
And is any of the meeting area, the new meeting area in that space, or is it on the other side of, there was a meeting space on the other side of the hotel, I believe?
Yes, so I think that that you were given a little bubble diagram where two meeting spaces were. One is, if you remember, I don't know if you ever saw the inside, we had a very large co-work area that can serve as meeting space. And the other bubble on the north side, which is in the first floor of the residential condominiums, that outside area is a very, very large area. And that was always intended as an outdoor event space. And what we've done is we don't need a spa because of what is being built down the street from us. So where we had the Medi Spa will be replaced with meeting space, event space. And that's about 8,500 or 10,000 square feet there.
And are you planning to sell all of the condos? Are you keeping any for the hotel where you'll be renting those out?
So the city's requirement of us is that the tower or one component of this be available for short-term rentals. And so the tower will be available, and we're in the middle of trying to design how that will be managed. We want to make sure it's managed, if possible, by the hotel to ensure that the quality of it remains at the level that we're building the project. But yes, so there will be the 29, which is why we went to 29 units. We took a 4-bedroom and we've reduced it down to 2 3-bedrooms. It was a 2-story unit in the tower, and we've separated those and made them into individual units.
So that will be rental probably through the hotel management.
That is correct.
And then the north and south villas will be for sale properties?
They will. Well, so will the tower. So will the tower, but you can put it in, you can rent it short term as an owner. And all 3 condominium pieces will have access to the amenities of the hotel. And the north and the south also have their own amenities, their own pools, et cetera.
And so will they be in one HOA or will they be in?
There will be 3 HOAs. Because they're separate lots. So we'll have we're designing it such that the condo tower will have to be on its own lot so that it can have a different set of CC&Rs from the north and the south because of the short-term rental requirement.
And will you manage all three of them as the management company?
Yes, that's our goal.
So that will also be in your CCNRs.
Yes, as best as we can. We're in discussion with legal to how to implement that.
Okay, I think that answers my questions. Does anybody else have questions for the applicant, or does anybody else want to speak with the finance person or the architect? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we have the architect clarify the issue of the height that was raised earlier?
He can clarify the difference in sight lines as well.
Madam Chair, if I may also, we've had the applicants speak. I think we would want to we want to keep public hearing open in case any other members of the public want to speak. Are there any other from staff?
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke there.
I had assumed that most of them spoke in public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? David, do you have anybody?
No requests directly to us.
Okay, so we have a request for the project architect to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Clay Arell here, architect with AB Design Studio. And is there a specific question that we want to address?
There was a question regarding the height. Commissioner Maruzzi, was it the
There was
north?
SK3, the SK3 document that shows heights of 50 feet. And then there's the AO2 that shows 44 feet. We didn't understand why there was a difference.
And specifically, you're looking at the southeast corner of the property,
Yeah, the
correct?
South Village. The South Village.
Yeah, great. So our approach on that project was to do a partially submerged or subterranean parking area for parking those villas specifically. And so we've gone down approximately 6 feet, and we're coming out of the ground approximately 5 or 6 feet to allow for a parking area below the units above. Depending on where you take your height limits or your height measurements, you're going to find different heights. So if I may, the way we've developed the project is it has little volumes that pull up and down and push in and out. And so at different parts of the building, you might have a height of, say, 44 feet, and in other parts, you might have a height of 50 feet. So there may be a little discrepancy between the two, but that's just because the volumes are shifting up and down. And so if you take a section through one part, you might get a different number. If you take an elevation, you might get a different number. So our goal has been to variegate the heights and the mass of the building to make sure that it has a bit of push and pull and a little bit of opportunity for gardens and roof gardens and vegetation and things of that nature. So you might find a little discrepancy between the two if you take it from a section here or a section there. But ultimately, we're trying to keep the mass of the building lower in certain parts to allow views to move through between the two buildings, the hotel and the other building.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Miller has some questions about the actual drawings.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, my question also was on SK3, and I would like the architect to further sort of to answer. And you said there may be some errors or differences in where the heights were taken, but so this is essentially a 3.5-story project. I can understand that. The parking level is half submerged, so that's the half level. Then there's 3 condominium levels above it. So
the roof on SK3 plan shows 50 feet at elevation. At 3.5 levels, I wouldn't think there would be anything that would be at 50 feet. Can you confirm that and tell me that that is the truth? Or is there a 50-foot elevation from your 0 point?
Well, the 50-foot elevation, if I may, is coming from the bottom. So in the report, the 50-foot elevation is coming from the bottom of the parking area. On the overall height of the spaces are large intentionally to be a luxury product. So we're trying to create volume within each individual unit that's above the parking area. So there's a 50-foot line that's from the partially subterranean grade to the top.
Hi, this is Anil here. If I may, Clay, to add one thing. The two sections, the lower section is through the north villa.
If somebody is speaking, can they please introduce themselves? And
Hi,
put
this is Anil from AB Design Studio.
And can you put yourself on camera?
Oh, sorry. Is it off?
Yes.
Here.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm looking at the sections right now, and I see the lower section is actually through building the north villas, which is basically the park, the garage, and 3 stories. So in total is 50 foot, as this is correct. And the south villas, which is the section above it, that's where we actually have the half garage underground. So the north villas is on grade. That's why it's 50 foot. That's why it's reading 50 foot. And the south villas is 6 foot under, which is, that's why we bring it to 44. The two section is just because if there are two on the top of each other, it might be a little bit confusing, but it's two sections for 2 different buildings.
I have a question. Does your 50 feet and your 44 feet include the parapets? Because the drawing on SK3 only indicates the roof. It does not indicate the parapet height.
That's for the roof, yes. That's for the...
And how high is the parapet then? Because we're not really interested in the roof. We're interested in how high the building is.
That's a good question. We haven't really actually went through the details of the parapets yet. It's not accessible, the roof. So it's going to be mainly mechanical if needed, but we haven't designed it yet.
But I mean, you're the architect. What are you thinking? 5 feet, 4 feet?
No, the minimum parapet height here would, because we're off property line and we're set back far enough, we could do probably a 10 or 12 inch parapet.
There's no requirement for safety for a higher parapet?
The roof is not accessible, so no, first of all. And second of all, we just need to ramp up for waterproofing. So we could, minimum is 8 inches. Generally they do 12 inches to make room for waterproofing to work.
So you could say it's not 50 feet, it might be 52 feet.
If we're saying 50 feet, it might be 51 feet or less.
Okay, well, that's not what your drawing shows. Your drawing shows much more than 8 inches from the roof line to the top of the building.
Well, again, we're in a concept here. So right now we're in the early stages of this. We haven't gone through design development. We haven't designed the roof assembly, the parapet heights and all those things. So if the comment is to keep that reduced, we're certainly able to do that.
Other questions for the architect or the applicant? I have one, and it's a question as to Mr. Priest, if you're comfortable with my asking this question. The applicant said that the city required them to do additional housing units. I'd like to, it would be helpful to know if, as we're considering this, what the city required.
What I can say is this is part of the discussions that are going on with the city. Nothing has been formally required in this PDD, but negotiations are ongoing. And this is part of those. This is part of moving the possibility of this forward. And then ultimately, a deal may be concluded here. But that's all I can say at this time.
It's just a little unsatisfying since we know that it's part of the negotiation.
Well, it's part of the negotiations. That is true.
Thank you. There being no more questions, the public hearing is closed. The matter is before the commission. And I'll take initial comments. I see Vice Chair Roberts, and then I see Commissioner Hirschfein. Vice Chair Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my comments brief. I have no issue with what's being presented with respect to design or percentages of housing versus hotel. I do have grave concerns about the heights of the new additions to this development. The condominium complex behind this has been taking a beating for years with this development in terms of losing its view. I have been watching this project for years because of my participation and involvement with the city of Palm Springs. Over the years, the developer has tried to work with the condominium complex to maintain some of their view lines. My concern is in this current iteration, that's not happening. What few view lines existed are being taken. And in as much as I appreciate additional housing, we have to look at the cost of that on the quality of life for the people that are already there. I appreciate that this is a luxury development. I appreciate that the developer will benefit from additional housing units. I think we can do better. I think that this development can find other areas for housing without sacrificing what little view is left for the condominiums behind it. It could be that the buildings simply aren't as high there, and that there's more of a spread on the property at ground level itself. It could mean a loss of hotel rooms, and that some of those hotel rooms are part of that larger building could become condominiums. But as it's being presented, I have real concerns on the view loss. And that's really all I have. There seems to be some confusion with the development team on what they're doing. And I guess that they're not exactly sure yet. They're coming to us to try to get approval for these additional heights and this additional square footage. So for now, all I can really look at comfortably is the increase of height, and I'm not comfortable with it. I'll conclude with that for now.
Commissioner Hirschfein.
Yeah, I'd like to take a step back. Not that I disagree with anything Vice Chair Roberts said, but I'd like to take a step back. I think we're premature in asking for the city to ask us to review this at this time. I think we should be reviewing it after the development agreement is made public so that we have a benchmark to know what it is required under the development agreement in terms of number of housing units. Without that, we're kind of shooting in the dark. We could say yes or no, and then there could be more units required. And then what, they're going to come back again with more units? I think it's premature. I think we should table this until there's a public statement about the state of the negotiation, that there's an agreement to a number of units, to a specific number. And then we can back into what those units should look like or the massing of them. And I would make a motion to that effect.
It's premature right now.
It's premature for us to review it. No.
What I want is comments from the rest of the commission.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me to clarify it.
No. What I'd like to do is take everybody's comments before I take a motion. Commissioner Irvin.
This is kind of a statement. It's in general. I feel like I take a lot of time in looking over these packets and making decisions. And I'm not too sure that the Planning Commission and the city is on the same page. It seems to me that we've made some decisions and these items keep getting bought back. So I'm just concerned about us being on the same page with making these decisions. And like Hirschbein said, I don't know if we're getting the complete package, if we're being able to make a sound decision. I'm just concerned about the communication and what's going on with the city and the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Maruzzi.
And I agree with Commissioner Irvin. It just, in the past with previous planning commissions, previous councils, there were circumstances where planning commission was really just a step to get to the city council. Whatever we decided, whatever the commission decided at that time wasn't really as relevant as what the city council was ultimately going to do. So perhaps this is an example where the city is just trying to move it forward through the planning commission so that then the city can address all of these concerns as well as whatever they've been negotiating. I don't like that concept, and I don't know if I agree with it. In fact, I don't think I do. So we'll have to see what the various motions are, but it just seems like it's being rushed through so then the council can go ahead and deal with all of these issues in total. I don't know if that's just me, but that's what it seems like.
Are there other comments? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, I would say I'm not sure that I would agree that this is premature. I mean, the applicant has come forward with a proposed amendment, and we as the Planning Commission are being asked to review that, and I think that's fine. The fact that there's going to be changes to the development agreement is going to happen at City Council, whether we review this now or not. But I don't think we need to necessarily hold up our action tonight for that issue itself. I do agree with Vice Chair Roberts that there is a height issue, but I think that could be relatively easily addressed. The developer's not going to like what I'm going to suggest, but I think this would address the height issue. I think if they knocked off the 4th level on that building closest to Center Court in the southeast corner, they would lose, I think, 4 units at that upper level, but that would further bring the 4-level part of the building or the 3.5 level part of the building much further away from that existing 1- and 2-story condominium, such that their view and their light and air would be, less impacted. That being said, there's only so much we can do because Center Court is 1 level with 4 of their units having 2-story extensions. I assume they're bedrooms on the 2nd floor. The fact is anything of 2 stories or more here on the site is going to have an impact to their views. And I don't think anyone at the city is suggesting that a 1-story building is all that is allowed on this site. This is almost downtown. It's across from 3-story Seoul. It's across from the 40 or 50-foot high convention center. For me personally, I don't have a problem with the 3.5 levels fronting Amato Road. Of course, the hotel is taller in the southwest corner of the site, but I do have an issue with the 3.5-story portion of these condos being as close to Center Court as they are. So my suggestion would be to peel off that upper level on the portion of the building closest to center court, they can either lose the 4 units or reconfigure the others to make the difference. And I think that satisfies me from a height perspective.
Commissioner Miller, to some extent, can you just explain which of these two you're cutting off? Is it, you would want to cut off the one where
Well, it's on the 3rd level floor plan. These are for the south villas, the 3rd level floor plan.
I'm just trying to look at the site plan and the streets aren't on it. Is it the one on Amato or the one on Caballeros?
Well, it's the 2 buildings. If you look at sheet A1.4S, it is the South Villa's 3rd floor. And that's at the top of that page. Essentially, there are 4 units that are closest to the center court condominiums. And I'm suggesting that if those 4 were eliminated, and I know that's very painful for a developer to hear, again, they might be able to reconfigure things such that they don't lose that 4 in number, but it's that bulk that is up there that has, I believe, the most impact to center court. And if those were either eliminated or reconfigured to be pulled even further away from that, what is essentially the north property line at that point, adjacent to center court condominiums, that, for me anyway, addresses the height issue at that point.
Yeah, I'm just not, I probably need to see it on, I just don't know what street you're next to, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you, are you looking at the street next to, the projects next to Amato?
No, it's not next to a street. It's, in my view, there's not an issue with the height along Amato Road.
No, but is it adjacent to Amato or adjacent to Avenida Caballeros?
Well, it's coming off of Avenida Caballeros.
So it's the back 4 buildings next to the hotel.
Well, it's between the hotel and Avenida Caballeros on the north side of the building in the southeast corner of the site.
Kathy, if you go to SK1, do you have that?
SK1?
Yeah, it's a different group of drawings.
I'm not sure.
Scott, you're referring to the building that is at the corner of Caballeros and Amato, correct? Is that the
Yes, but I'm talking about the north portion of that building.
Just the north piece of it.
Right, where it directly or most closely abuts the center court condominium.
Got it. Okay, so Kathy, you see where he's talking about?
No, because I'm not. I just would like to see it on the screen.
Okay, it's on drawing SK1. It's the first big drawing it shows.
I don't have the SK.
Okay, go to A0.01 on your packet.
Okay, I'm at A0.01.
In the bottom right-hand corner is the condominium building you're talking about.
Okay, the 24 unit building.
And then what Commissioner Miller is talking about, it's actually, you could say it's 2 buildings. I don't know, technically, maybe it's not, but there's 2 halves to that building. And he's talking about the northern half of that building.
That's correct.
And you don't think that there's the same issue on the 12 unit condo?
I do.
I do.
4 feet?
I do, on the east side of that, yes.
Because I see it in the back buildings on both of them.
Because what we approved was a 2-story building there, and now it's a 50-foot plus parapet story building there. But again, I think we're negotiating with ourselves here. I think we wait until we see what the count is that the city agrees to, and then we back into a design. Because if the city says they need those 4 units, then we're talking about maybe something else.
Well, I disagree with you to one degree, Commissioner. I think that the number of condominiums or the number of hotel rooms is really irrelevant here. It's more the impacts. There's other places to put condominiums.
Agreed, 100%. I agree with you.
So to me, what the city council decides with respect to that is it's not our circus. This is really about impacts. For me, the only issue I see with what they're bringing are the impacts to the condos behind it. And I believe there are ways to do what they want without having additional impact to those condos, which are already hugely impacted.
So do you want to make a motion to that effect?
Well, I don't know that we've heard from everyone.
Oh, sorry.
I'm in, Commissioner Lyon.
I would just offer that I am in pretty solid agreement with both Vice Chair Roberts and with Commissioner Miller. As far as my only concern with what is proposed is on the new condo units that are, roughly twice as high as what they are replacing. And I understand that that is allowable within, since this is a PDD and since we're not, that it is something that could be approved. I think that our job as a planning commission is to look out for the best interests of the community. And I think that in this case, we are ignoring the interests of longstanding neighborhoods, and that while there could be a compromise, reduction of some number of units, that it is not appropriate that we just plain approve what is in the interest of one party, and that is the developer, at the expense of the neighbors in the existing neighborhood. I personally could support the proposed changes if the height is lowered on the east side of the north condos and on the north side of the south condos, so that there is a little bit more stepping. I understand that the design has added some space and light to the buildings, but it's principally on the interior, and it would benefit the new condo owners. If you look at the massing of the architecture on SK2, I would have a hard time saying that is airy or light or open for the existing neighbors who would be looking at that.
Commissioner Irvin had his hand up first, and then Commissioner Maruzzi. Commissioner Irvin?
I didn't have any more comments, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Maruzzi.
I could support what Commissioner Lane is proposing, and which is the same as Vice Chair Roberts.
And I can as well. I would normally, I don't have a problem with height in general. This has been a long negotiation with these neighbors. And I think the neighbors have worked with them in good faith. And I do think it has significant impact. So those recommendations work for me. I feel a little, I don't like coming into this knowing that the council is negotiating the number of units and this being sent to us so that we kind of get set up to be overturned. But I think if we're expressing a concern about the heights and the adjacency and making that as a recommendation, I will vote for it. If someone would like to craft the motion. Commissioner Roberts or Commissioner Miller?
Well, it would be my feeling that this isn't quite baked all the way. And if we're talking about peeling off some significant portions of the third levels on two portions of the building on the northeast and the southeast and the northwest. I think this commission needs to see the revised plans. Certainly for me, I would want to see revised plans showing that before I'm ready to move a plan forward.
So is this more of a situation, I need to understand, we're sending essentially recommendations to the city council, so we're not really acting here. Because in that case, to me, the message to the city council would be, we don't really have issue with increased number of residential units. In fact, you know, personally, I'm happy to see that. We need the residential. All of us in one manner or another are having issues with the height impacts on the center court condominiums. So would our recommendation be to send that we're good with everything they're bringing with the exception of the height and impacts on center court, to go back and come back with the same number of condos, but in a better design that doesn't have such negative impacts on those around it?
Madam Chair, if I may, I believe there's two ways the commission could approach this. Actually, three. One approach would be has been suggested, which would be to continue this item until the council takes action. I don't know that that is necessarily the best route to go in this case. I believe that there is interest on the part of the council that this eventually move forward. That said, the other two options you have is you could recommend approval and just note your concerns about height and layout of the new condo building to the council, and then the council would be taking a fresh look at that and they would have the commission's recommendation. A third option would be to deny it on the ground that you cannot make some of the findings, that you'd be finding that it is detrimental to adjacent properties or residents, and therefore, and possibly finding 4 as well about the site being adequate sized shape to accommodate the density or intensity. If you believe that's going to result in too tall a building, I believe you could also say that finding 4 cannot, and then you would be recommending against the PDD. It would be appealed to the city council, and the city council would still make ultimately the final decision on that. So you have various ways you can go on this. Ultimately, it would be at the council for a final decision on both the PDD amendment and on the tentative map.
Planning Director Hadwin, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that continuing the item would likely interfere with the city council's ongoing negotiations on this item. And so I think advancing it to the city council in some fashion with the planning commission's recommendation is likely the best course of action, in my opinion.
Chair, can I take a stab at a motion?
Yes.
I move that we recommend to city council that this project in its current form is not acceptable to the planning commission. And what is not acceptable is simply the impacts on the condominium complex behind it. We have no issue with style. We have no issue with the number of units. We have no issue with coverage. But we have grave concerns about impacts. And if we were to act on this, we would deny it as it stands for those impacts, or send it back to solve the issue. Let the council go where they want with that.
In that case, Madam Chair, my recommendation would be that that motion is to recommend a denial of the PDD amendment. Expressing, of course, the commission's thoughts about height, impact on visual and access, things like that. But it would be a PDD amendment denial recommendation.
My only concern with going in with a denial is that the council not fully understand our concern. We don't have a big issue with this project. We have a rather small issue, and it's fixable. And my concern is if we simply send an action of a denial, the council will see us as having denied it and gives them the opportunity to flip it without solving the problem. What we're asking for is that the developer solve the problem, not slow down the project and move it forward. So I'm not comfortable with a straight denial on this.
Madam Chair, what you might do is offer the applicant the opportunity to speak and see if they're willing to make those changes.
Great idea, David.
Is the applicant, would the applicant like to speak on this?
I will try. Until I sit down with the architect and figure out how we can modify height. We thought we were addressing the concerns that you've brought up because those are always paramount in our thinking, which is why we've done the terracing and moving everything back towards the center of the project, where it's only at the center of those southeast condos on those couple of units where you have that height, and the rest of them are much lower. And you can see that in the terracing in the section. The comment about that there's plenty of other space to build condominiums is absolutely inaccurate. The way the garage is designed and the space and the setbacks that are required of us, because we did look at trying to add condominiums in the whole open area on the west side of the hotel, and it was not possible to do so. So we have tried to look at ways to accommodate the impact to our neighbors. And we did the same if you look at the elevations of the north end by creating a lot of open space. It's actually not solid walls, it's a lot of building. And if you also look at where it's located, if you know Center Court, there's a lot of parking area. A lot of that north condominium is actually where their garages and driveways are. And Center Court is inward looking, not outward looking. However, all that being said, I am willing to work with the architect to see if it's possible to ameliorate some of the issues of the height. I understand the concerns, and we've always been very cooperative, but we have already tried to address it and without having to give up our count. Everything is just 2-bedroom for exactly this reason, is to try to get in the number of units that we know that we can sell, because you can't really look at it by square footage. And that has limited us in the size of those units. But Clay is available. Clay can maybe speak to whether or not we can do some of these modifications to the existing building, certainly on the north side of the southeast corner. I think that the north side, because of how it's located against all their open space, I don't know that that's as necessary. The 3 condominiums or 4 condominiums that are 1 story along that western wall of Center Court are all looking out on the hotel site, primarily. So we adjusted already all those setbacks for that to allow them a view of the mountains without the hotel being right in their face. So I don't know that the north needs that accommodation, just to say. But Clay, if you're okay with Clay speaking, he's the architect, he can better address that.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. I've spent some time analyzing this with our team, and what we've done is to the north of our southeastern part of the property, which seems to be in some discussion. Those units, there's about 5 units that look to the south, and most of those are garages and then what appears to be 2nd-story bedroom. So most of that project that we've seen tends to be more inward focused to the courtyard that is in between there. So as an architect, we're going to look at that and evaluate whether or not there's a big view impact. And is there a view impact? There probably is. If you look at it from today and there's nothing there, and you look at it from tomorrow and there's something there. So certainly it will change. But ultimately, what we've seen is what is facing our project from the, like facing our project to the south is a driveway and garages that are serving those units. And most of the units seem to face inward to the project that they are a part of, and not outwardly the views and other things. So it's been our approach as an architecture firm to not just study that and understand that, but to try to respect it. So pull the buildings apart as far as we can, get the northerly portion of our project on the southeastern portion of the site, to pull away from that as much as we can, so that if somebody is in their master bedroom or in their bedroom, it is not completely void of view. And, you know, is it perfect? No. Is it going to address everybody? Probably not. But we're talking about 4 or 5 condos that are facing southwardly, and most of them on the second level are probably assumed to be bedrooms, and below them are garages. So again, the project to the north of us is looking inwardly, and we're trying to make sure that our project is not obliterating their views entirely, to the best that we can. But again, we're trying to develop a project that will have.
You're not answering your question.
I want to just interrupt. I think that what you're looking for is, are we willing to look at it? I'm always willing to look at everything. I want everybody to be happy with it. And I also want to build a project. And part of it is the true damn facts of it all. Excuse my use of that language, is that hotel financing is very, very difficult. And we have been adding residential to try to make sure that we can get it built this time and not without any delays. But I'm certainly willing, and I believe ownership would be willing, to sit down and figure out how we can do it. Whether we have to eliminate 4, maybe we can eliminate 2 and create some view quarters. But I'm happy to look at that. I'm not adverse to that. And I think that through the history of this project, we've done all kinds of things to accommodate our neighbors, including replacing all of their windows so they wouldn't be affected by noise. So if you are making the recommendation that we review that and try to eliminate some of the height or create more view quarters through that, I'm completely willing to do that.
That's what Lori, that's what we're looking for. What concerns me and what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of defensiveness of what you've done. We get it. What we're looking for here is for you to bring the heights back down on the condo buildings. There are ways of doing that. I know that, and you know that. You and I have known each other a long time. We're asking you to find. We're not asking you to eliminate any square footage. We're simply asking you to do a little bit of a better design and not have such a dramatic impact on the behind you, okay?
Well, let me just clarify. So what you're asking, if I remember correctly from what I've been listening to, is that on the north side of the southeast corner, you want me to look at trying to reduce those heights on just those units on the north side, because the building is a kind of a square or U, right? So, and I think that at the end of the U, it's not actually that tall. It goes up and down quite a bit, as does the north side. But you want me to look at that very top layer and see if we can, at a minimum, possibly.
We want you to look at the top levels of both condo developments and see how you can reduce those maybe a level, which might mean putting some condos back on the ground or moving them around, but just reducing those by a story so their impact is greatly reduced.
I absolutely think we can do it on the south side. I would request, because I think if you really look at how it lines up with what it lines up, we are not in front of any condos on the north side. And to reduce one building and not the other, we're ending up starting to reduce the count in the building, trying to redesign that, unless we submerge the garage a little so that we can reduce maybe by 6 or 8 feet. But that north side really is positions where their driveway is. So I don't know that's as critical as what we're addressing on the south side. And I'm happy to look at that, and I'm willing to figure it out how we can do it. For sure. I'm not trying to be defensive. I just know how much effort we put into trying to accommodate it already. So, but I will do that on the south. I would request that it not be on the north, because I don't think it has the impact that everybody is thinking that it does. I think it's on the south side of those condos that the problem is.
So, Chair, I'm suggesting that we'll remand this back to the city council with our recommendations that the view impacts or height impacts be reduced on both condominium requests. I think if we do anything more than that, if we do a denial,
I don't want to do a denial.
I don't want to do a denial. I don't think it's a good idea here.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm looking at the code right now. The code does give the commission the option to recommend approval with conditions, or denial. So if it's the commission's preference, I suppose you could recommend approval with conditions about concerns for height as discussed.
I think that if that's where we've got two choices. We can do continue this project for 2 weeks to see if you can work on this and you bring it back to us, or a referral.
We don't need to see a complete design of your condos. We just need to see blocking and height reduction.
So would you like to bring that back to us in 2 weeks?
I'd rather have you make it a condition. I'll tell you why. I have a schedule, and I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but I have a schedule I'm supposed to be keeping. And I know I'm not supposed to be talking about my discussions with the city, but unless they are fine with me just delaying, I cannot update the civil, which is what I mentioned, until I know my count. If I know my count's going to be 24 or less, I can at least do the civil. I mean, I can certainly bring it back with blocking, but I can also do it as conditioned, and I can work on it to do that. I understand it's up to you. I'm kind of open to other. I would rather not. We're trying to get some momentum moving forward, but if you want me to come back, we'll come back.
Lori, this has been dragging around for 15 years. I don't think 2 more weeks is going to make a difference. Why don't you sit down with your team, show us some height reductions. You'll get what you want, which is an approval from us. But at this point, I don't sense any of my colleagues are ready to approve this in the way that you're presenting it.
And I would like to encourage that when the development team takes a look at this, keep in mind that the only audience, or that the neighboring HOA is not the only audience. And if it's not visible from their view windows and it's out their back door or out where in the parking areas, it is still the area that we're talking about, or that I'm talking about right now, which is the up as we get to the north end of the north development, anywhere along there. The other audience is the community at large, who looks at the development from the street. And when there is a jarring and abrupt height change, it stands out and it does not assimilate well into the community. So as you're taking a look at that, this is an area that could potentially be visible to people from the street, not just people whose garage is back onto it, if that makes sense.
I'd also like to say my experience with the view of the mountain is I have a view of the mountain when I walk out my front door, which I do every day. I don't have a view from my living room or my back patio of the mountain, but I enjoy that view of the mountain when I'm walking out to my car or walking the street or doing some work in the front. And just because it's not visible from your living room doesn't mean it's not important to the people that live there.
So I think we've come to, the motion would be to come back to us in 2 weeks with some blocking, understanding what what we've requested, and we would continue this item for 2 weeks. Is that the motion you want to make, Commissioner Roberts?
That's the motion.
Do we have a second? Commissioner?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Can we have a roll call, please?
I'm sorry, I missed who was the second.
Commissioner O'Leary.
Okay, so sure. Vice Chair Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Eileen,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi,
Yes.
and Chairwoman.
Yes.
Madam Chair, real quick, so this is continued to a date certain, so a new PHN will not be required.
And the motion has passed unanimously.
And when we get this back, Edward, can we get the old sight lines?
Correct, I don't have it here, so I'll include it in my package.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can we have a 5-minute?
How about a 10-minute
Okay.
break? I need 10 minutes.
Okay.
We
So
will,
we're back at 7:52.
yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before you leave, I'm gonna call you tomorrow about our subcommittee. I need you.
Oh, yes. I know. I've been thinking about that too.
Yes, please.
Got time.
Yes. So maybe when we talk tomorrow, maybe we can find a date next week.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
The Planning Commission is back in session. The next item before us is a public hearing. It is CRA management on behalf of Cruise Holdings LLC, Astrid 13 LLC for a conditional use permit to operate a coffee shop and cocktail lounge located at 180.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I think your audio cut out for a moment. So I think you had requested a staff report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Thank you, chair members. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, are we all set?
You need only one slide showing. You've got two. It's fine. Perfect.
Very good. So, as Madam Chair already announced, the CRA management at 180 East Palm Canyon for the application of a CUP and an LUP. The CUP is for the use of a cocktail lounge required by the zoning code. Due to the non-conforming parking situation, as you can see on the left here, the area view of the subject property, these businesses, very small business spaces, are in a very pedestrian-oriented environment, and virtually no one has parking. And so that's what the LUP is for, to request parking waiver. Okay. So this is the proposed interior floor plan, and they are also proposing the addition of a rooftop deck to maximize the pedestrian environment is ultimately the goal. And adaptive, and then also I do have to mention that it is a very creative adaptive reuse of the commercial space. And considering what we have in our next slide, will really give a commercial building that's been sitting there a nice uplift and addition to this block of that South Palm Canyon, or rather south to east Palm Canyon curve. So here we're looking at a section of the addition of the rooftop patio, improvements from the rear alley on the back side of the building, and there's a small corridor space between the neighboring shop, the ice cream shop, and this tenant space that will also benefit from this remodel. So as you can see here, the use of the materials will significantly improve this space, and with a addition of the very popular roll-up glass door, it's really going to provide a nice amount of light and visibility for the new business, and really add again to the aesthetic of the pedestrian environment here, which is ultimately the applicant's goal. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Lane?
Yes, I generally like what I see. My concern, and I don't see it addressed in the staff report, or my question is, deals with pedestrians crossing the street. Over the years, there's a long history of people getting hit and killed on that particular curve. People get moving quickly. There's not a long line of sight, and bad things happen. So, and I know that there have been some changes made in recent years to add pedestrian crossings or to facilitate that and to try to make the area safer. The use that's proposed is one for alcohol consumption, which does not lead to good decision-making for people who are parking across the street and dashing across or dashing back again to get to their car after drinking. So I'm wondering, staff, can you alleviate my concerns, or can you tell me what the history, can you put any numbers behind the frequency with which people get hit on that curve, and how that may or may not have changed, hopefully improved since the addition of some of the traffic safety measures?
I would have to look into some research on that, because I don't know the real answer. I don't have that right here. Okay. As you had noted, that they had made crosswalk improvements, as you can see in this aerial. So that would help significantly. Yes, you're right. People may have a tendency to jaywalk.
Yeah. Especially because there's not on-site parking. Yes.
I would ask if anyone from the city's engineering department might be available and have any additional information on this, but I suspect that crosswalk was installed in part to alleviate those concerns. Whether the data supports an improvement or not, we would have to get back to you on, but I'm not sure anyone from engineering that might be able to provide a little more insight on that.
Hello, Chair, Commissioners. It's Rick in engineering. I do not have any data for you to support any of that. The crosswalk improvements are, pretty close to that building, but I would have to do some more research and get back to you with that.
Other questions for staff, and possibly you can take the slide down so that I can see this. Commissioner Vice Chair Roberts, and then Commissioner Miller.
I know I saw it in the staff report, but if staff could remind me when this transitions from a coffee house to a bar?
Around 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
3 to 4, okay. Mm-hmm. But they will not be serving alcohol prior to that?
Correct.
Okay, great. Actually, that's all I have.
Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, question for staff. I'm looking at conditions of approval PLN4, where you've addressed entertainment and amplified noise. And that condition right now is just referring to the interior of the building. Is there a reason why you didn't feel the need to put a similar condition or to include in that condition the exterior rooftop deck? Because I would hate for that to slip through the process and that there all of a sudden would be an allowance for amplified music on the rooftop deck.
Well, there was concerns discussed about this particular issue with the addition of an outdoor space being added to this tenant space. I've spoken with the applicant myself, and the goal, if there hasn't been an ultimate decision on whether there would be amplified music to the outdoor spaces or not, but the goal of the applicant would be for it to be just as the condition reads, the music or any amplified music would be at a level that anyone could have a normal conversation. The goal of this cocktail lounge is just that, to have it be a soft, calm, quieter, much quieter environment and not a club.
So you,
And if
you
I, oh, I'm
so
sorry.
staff wouldn't have any objection to me adding to condition PLN4 that amplified music is not permitted on the roof deck, period, right?
That would not be a decision that I make. I would be conferring with my staff and of course the applicant. And certainly I look for Chris's direction.
Right. I think Commissioner Miller, from our perspective, that the condition wasn't added because the city does have a noise ordinance which would regulate amplified music in outdoor spaces such as that. But if the commission did feel that, you know, additional safeguards needed to be put in place through the conditions, I believe that would be your prerogative.
My concern is that just simply across the alley, which is 10 or 12 feet wide, there's apartment buildings. And, you know, I think the rooftop deck has the ability to have an impact without music or amplified music, but I obviously we can't stop people from talking up on a rooftop deck. But I think from my perspective, it makes sense to have a condition that would prohibit amplified music up there because it's a great looking space, right? And great space for a guitar player to be up there, you know, doing some tunes. But that's when it really becomes an impact where there shouldn't be any impact, I think.
These are still questions, so I'm assuming you'll add this as a condition when we get the decision. Are there other questions for staff?
Peter Maruzzi here.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Maruzzi.
Hi. Just the first question is that gate that blocks the corridor between the ice cream and creperie and this building. Currently that's open and there's some seating areas in there. Would that be blocked off? It looked like it from the rendering we saw.
Yes, I believe that does. That is blocked.
Because right now it's pretty much open during the day when the businesses are open. And it'd be a shame if that was, I would think they would be unhappy to creperie since it's the only access you can get except from the rear.
We can ask that question of the applicant.
And then the other question is regarding the parking issue. 2 doors down or 3 doors down is a wine bar in I think a regular bar combination. They've been there for a number of years. But these two would compete and have almost the same audience. Parking is a real problem around there. I mean, Mirasol solves it somewhat with the parking that they have to the north and also to the east, but also people park across the street on the north side in that very large open lot, which I don't think they really want people parking there, but people do all the time. So I don't really know where people would park at all for this business that would be competing with the wine shop bar 2 doors down. I mean, is there any, how is it staff analyzed where people would park at all? You can't park on, well, you can barely park on Palm Canyon.
I might try to answer that, Commissioner Maruzzi. You know, I think that there is an acknowledgement that this is a historic part of the city that does, you know, these existing commercial structures that are historic do have deficient parking under today's standards. And there were specific exceptions written to the zoning code to accommodate that. So the decision, you know, is before the Planning Commission on whether the land use permit is appropriate for this location. But in our opinion, it does meet the criteria that were outlined in the zoning code to specifically address, you know, these small historic businesses that don't have the ability to add additional parking to make sure that they can still operate as commercial spaces and serve the community. So, you know, it's in the report what those conditions are, but in our opinion, this is a small existing building. It existed, you know, prior to 2014, which is one of the conditions. It's not in the downtown parking combining zone. It's less than 3 acres and it's less than 20,000 square feet. And so in our opinion, this meets the intent of that section of the zoning code, which does seek to waive parking for these existing businesses.
So in that sense, then the commission really doesn't need to evaluate the parking issues, given all of these other conditions that are already met?
I think that the commission, sorry, Jim, are you going to jump in there?
I mean, the way the code is written, it does meet the criteria for a parking waiver given its location and service. And the land use permit is before the commission. That policy has been expressed by the code. parking should be waived there. Again, if the commission has specific concerns about waiving the parking for this particular project, feel free to express those. And if further research is necessary for the commission, we can certainly do that. But that preference has been expressed in the code.
I see. I guess I'll wait for my comments, which I'll just repeat from what I said a few minutes ago till later.
Are there other questions for staff? I have a couple. First of all, I tend to think there isn't a reason not to have delineated the hours for the bar portion of this. It just goes from 8 in the morning till 11 at night, or 8 in the morning till 1 in the morning, or 10 in the. So I think am I correct that that's just a mistake, and that we can make a condition that clearly delineates when the alcohol will start to be served?
Yes, I can. Let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Richard.
I was streamlining the overall hours of operation of the business by when they opened to when they closed, but I'm certain I have in my records here the hours that they plan on operating as a coffee shop and cocktail lounge. I was kind of recalling that it was in that hour of 3 to 4 when they transitioned.
So we can confirm that with the applicant, and then strengthen the condition. The second question came to me through somebody calling me out on social media from a post about this today, and this would be a question for the city engineer. There was a concern about the speed on the street and whether or not, and this probably doesn't, it's probably not in our purview, but wanting some kind of a gray line behind which the parking would go, because people go very fast. And is that something engineering can look at?
Yeah, I did speak to our traffic person this afternoon, and also ran it by the city engineer. Edge lines typically are not used to delineate areas or curb extensions typically. We do have them in a couple areas of the city. It's not a standard that we use, but we would be willing to look at it. And so I'll share that with the city engineer and our field people tomorrow.
Thank you. And then the last one I had is a safety issue for staffing on the roof deck. And it's probably a question for the applicant to see if we can add some shade to the roof deck, so that in the very hot times that we're experiencing, staff is not going to be required to be standing outside or standing in the heat. So that's a concern on the roof deck. Almost every roof deck I've seen in the city has some shaded area. But that's I don't know if you've discussed that with the applicant at all.
I have, and I will let him respond to that. We had a conversation earlier this morning based on your comments that Chris had relayed to me. So we can, if that's acceptable, both when we're ready to have him jump in on the discussion.
We're almost there, I think. I don't see any more questions. We can, at this point, the public hearing is open. If the applicant is present, you have 10 minutes. And I don't know if any members of the public are here to speak on this. If the applicant is here, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner, the commission, and the community, if the community is still there. So to address a few things that I've heard in this conversation, I just want to notify everyone that Dead or Alive is actually permanently closed. They've been closed for quite a few months now. And then your concerns with the gate, the shared access space. That diagram was merely a representation of what kind of materials we would use. But as a good neighbor, we would keep that gate open. We do close that at night for security purposes, but if we open during business, we will use that as well. And then to address the shading, which is completely valid, and especially with the higher winds that we're seeing that come up all of a sudden, I think what we will do is install sun sails or shade sails that will be permanently bolted to the roof. And they would be secure enough that they would withstand any sort of wind loads that we're seeing in Palm Springs, and then offer ample shade to staffing and customers. And then in terms of hours, I completely agree. We are operating as a kind of local neighborhood coffee shop in the morning, and then there will be some sort of break where we transition into a bar lounge. And then in terms of noise mitigation, we are completely on board with the community. We want to be good neighbors. So our engineer actually designed our roof deck not only for live loads of people, but plant loads for vegetation. So our plans were to plant larger vegetation hedges towards the east side of our roof deck. So that would allow some sort of noise mitigation on that end. And then, I was speaking to Richard about this, and thank you for the great presentation. Our intent is really to provide a local communal bar lounge where you can go to Marisol, you can go get a crepe, you can get ice cream, and then, hey, let's go get a cocktail where I can just quietly chat with some friends on the roof deck and enjoy this beautiful view and have very light ambient music, one in which you can still hear your neighbor who's right across from you. So that it's not our intention for this to be a bachelorette party, club kind of scene. That's definitely not what we want. And so, we're open to working with the neighborhood to mitigate the noise. Because, we are locals as well. So, we understand that concern.
If there are questions of the applicant, or maybe, are you okay if I ask? The one is, you're okay with no amplified music on the roof deck?
I'm not, to be completely honest. I do think that would be a missed opportunity. I think, Palm Springs is about culture and arts and music. I'm not saying I want to have bands up there, but if we wanted to have a soft background ambient noise, I think that would be a missed opportunity that I think even locals would enjoy. And so for it to be completely silent would really, I think, be a detriment to the vibe and to the community. I don't know how many times anyone's walked into a space where it's completely silent. I think that wouldn't be a comfortable space for visitors or the community.
By amplified music, I meant loudspeakers.
Oh, no. I mean, this would just be...
This is soft background music.
Soft background music, exactly.
Any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Olayan.
Yes, I hear you speak towards using landscaping on the roof to mitigate the sound. Unfortunately, it doesn't bear out. Landscaping does not, people want to think that it will, but it really doesn't dampen the sound, and it will propagate through that, especially if it's landscaping on the roof in the desert in the summer. It's hard to get it to stay alive, let alone to thrive and participate in the mitigation. I'm wondering if you would be open to accepting a condition that had some follow-up with the required sound attenuation as designed by a sound engineer or as approved by the director or something along those lines.
We had actually hoped and proposed to put a wall in the back, but that was denied by the city. For some reason, they counted that as additional FAR. But that was my first intent, is to actually use a solid wall, which I think would really help mitigating the sound. So I don't know if the Planning Commission can help us with that. But I do think that that would be the best solution, is to just put up a barrier between the neighbors and our rooftop.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
Well, actually, that was going to be my suggestion. Not just for sound mitigation. I'm not sure a freestanding wall is going to provide much sound mitigation, but more for visual separation between them and the residents right across the alley. I don't know if there's any leeway we have with this FAR issue, but I think it would be a better solution to the proximity to those residences. Can I venture into comments for just a moment?
No.
Okay, well, I'll save it then.
The public hearing is still open and we're still at questions of the applicant. And let me go from this to ask our planning director if there are any members of the public who indicated they would like to speak.
No members of the public signed up to speak in advance.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak who are present? There being none, are there any more questions of the applicant? At this point, the public hearing is closed and we can venture into comments or into I could almost propose a motion, but let's go into Commissioner Hirschbein's comments.
Well, I just wanted to ask staff if that wall idea is totally off the table because of this FAR issue.
Richard, what was the history on that conversation?
I would have to actually defer to Teddy for that. I am unaware of this wall issue related to FAR. I'm guessing it has something to do with, because this is not the first plan that you've submitted. Is that accurate, Teddy?
Correct. So actually in the rear, we had proposed a three-sided covering. So 3 walls and then a roof. And so they considered anything under that roof as additional FAR. So I can go back to our engineers. It's already been designed. Structurally, we can't, for wind, cannot just have a wall there by itself. We do need to have sides to attach it to. But if the building department allows us to do that without a roof, we can use a sail, so it's not a permanent roof. Then I think that would be a really good solution. But I would need the help of the planning commission with the building department.
Unfortunately, commissioners, I think we would have to do a little more investigation into what exactly was preventing that particular proposal, since it's not before us now to answer that conclusively. But I think certainly if there's a solution within the, that works for zoning and building code, we're open to that.
One more question for the applicant. What hours are you proposing for alcohol sale?
So it will be seasonal. As we know, Palm Springs is seasonal. So depending on the season, we'd like to have a blanket hours, which would probably be 4 to 1. But most likely it'll be probably 5 or 6 to 1 o'clock.
So if we start you at 4, we can work with that. We can put 4 in and then I'm going to try a motion on this. I don't think I think, people like this project. We'll get to the parking as the last issue. The motion I would have is approval with the conditions on the hours being changed so that the coffee shop is open and you can serve coffee all the hours you have there, but alcohol sales will start at 4 o'clock. So it'll be the hours that are in the current conditions. The second is that you will create some shade on the rooftop with sunshades. If you can put the 3 walls up, we would, if that can be worked through with the engineering department, we would leave that for approval by the planning director. That the condition on light music that is in would apply to the deck and to the interior space, to both spaces. And so that there's the music is at a level where people can talk. And I think that was it for conditions that people had here. Engineering will take a look at the whites, creating a white, whatever you call it, a white line. But that's not a condition of approval. That's just something engineering said they would look at safety. And then the last condition is the condition regarding parking. And since I'm making the motion and maybe we can discuss this, I recommend that we give the parking waiver. I worked in another city where we had to turn down the exact kind of places we wanted to put into some of our smaller existing places because of our parking requirement. And I think that there isn't sufficient parking. This is a very nice use, complementary use in this neighborhood. And I personally would support it if there's a second to my motion.
Chair, I have just one comment about your motion. You mentioned something about the roof wall being referred to engineering. I think you meant being referred to the building department.
I'm sorry, to the building department.
I just wanted to make that clarification.
And then the approval on that to the planning director.
Under discussion, could I suggest a slight amendment to the motion specifically regarding the rooftop noise?
Yes.
My concern is the position of those speakers that are going to be providing this ambient music is critical to whether or not the residents across the alley are going to hear it. I think we need to limit the speakers to the east side of the rooftop facing west, because if speakers are put on the west facing east, those residences are going to hear the music even if it's low. So what I found in my own home environment is it really makes a difference where the speakers are positioned and which way they're facing. And I think they can be positioned on the east side of that roof as long as they're facing to the west. In other words, they are facing away from the residential.
I'm happy with that amendment. Does Commissioner Land, you had additional issues on sound, didn't you?
You're muted.
Not anymore. I wanted to see if the applicant was receptive to the idea of something other than landscaping for sound mitigation. And it certainly sounds like we've moved way, maybe open to it and we've moved beyond that. So my concerns are satisfied. We might want to clarify though, make it clear that sound amplification will not be permitted without sound mitigation measures in place.
I think I'm very comfortable with that. Is the planning director comfortable with that? Can you create a condition?
I believe that can be conditioned. I'll look to Jim to disagree with me, but I think that works.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
Well, I'll just propose an amendment to the proposal. And it's something we've done in the past where we've looked at these outdoor applications requests before, where we come back in a period of time, 3 months or 6 months, to review whether there's been any issues with it.
That's acceptable to me. Is it acceptable to the seconder? Commissioner Miller?
Yes, that would be acceptable to me.
And the only other thing that we mentioned is that the door that opens to the other two businesses will remain open during, is it daylight hours that the other businesses are open? That door will remain openable or open
During business hours.
during business hours. Commissioner Maruzzi.
So ultimately, this, I guess, is more of a business question or based on their business plan. I just hope you've learned whatever it was that went wrong with the bar down 2 doors down and why they closed. I'm very concerned about the parking issue, but it sounds like it's nothing we can really address or we have the interest in doing. But I hope it works for you, because people aren't going to be able to park over where that bank is. Whatever. Anyhow, that's my concern. But good luck.
Any other discussion on the motion? Commissioner Lane.
Just in response to several of the comments that we've had, I would never want to deny a project short on parking if it means leaving a building unused, blighted, or otherwise an eyesore. I think having shortage of parking is much preferable to having blight. And I think that the proposed project does a great job of that. I'm also not, that's a general statement. On this particular proposal, I'm not concerned about a shortage of parking, because you know what? There's a lot of hotels in walking distance, and people will stay at the hotels and they'll just walk to it if there's a shortage of parking. So I don't see that being an issue. And I think that's exactly what our ordinance has set up to do, is to allow things that are technically underparked to be approved in situations like this.
Can we call the roll?
Yes. Chairwoman?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Alain?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Roberts?
Yes.
The motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. Best of luck. Invite us to your opening.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one thing that we didn't specify though in the conditions that I just realized after looking at the motion is the time of review. At what point does the commission request this to return?
6 months?
I think we've done 6 months typically, but sometimes it's been 3.
I'd suggest 6 months. You want 3?
Well, I think 3 allows us a more reasonable time to address if there's an issue or not. I would hate for the residents to have to live through 4 or 5 months of noise issues if they don't have to. If there is indeed going to be a noise issue, we would know about it within the first month or 2. So I support 3 months myself, but
It's fine with me. Is there any objection to 3 months? 3 months it is. Okay, moving right along. We are at public hearing 2B, Mark Temple, owner, for a change of zone for an undeveloped 6.44 acre parcel from single family residential R1D, which is 7,500 square foot minimum lots, to R1E, 5,000 square foot minimum lots, a mitigated negative declaration per SEQA, and a tentative tract map to subdivide the parcel into 31 single-family residential lots located at the easterly terminus of Verona Road. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can. Thank
Great. You read the project into the record. So let me go and discuss the application requests. One is a change of zone from the R1D zone, which is a 7,500 square foot lot, to an R1E zone, which is a 5,000 square foot lot. And you mentioned the tentative tract map equaling 31 lots, and then a negative declaration per SEQA, and we'll go through each one of these. I just have a few slides, so it won't be a long presentation. The site that is in question is a triangle-shaped lot at the north end of town at the terminus of East Verona Road. It is located here in the dashed red. It's vacant land that is adjacent to the Whitewater Wash Dam. The general plan is low-density residential. It's 6.44 acres, and they're requesting to rezone this from R1D to R1E. So in looking at the general plan designation, once again, it's this purple triangle lot. You'll notice that it has a low-density residential designation, and the lots that are to the west along Whitewater and Verona Road are a different land use designation as very low density residential. So you received a letter in the mail in your packet from a resident describing that this development would not be consistent with the other 10,000 square foot lots. The fact is that it's a different general plan designation. So it is consistent with what an LDR zone general land use would allow. So it would allow a 4.1 to 6 dwelling units per acre, and the 31 lots that's proposed is a 4.18 dwelling units per acre. So it's less than what the zone would allow, or the land use designation would allow, which would be a total of 38 units. The plan that's in your packet that's before you here is an illustrative design. The project is not before you for siting of individual houses. It's for the change of zone and the tract map. So the applicant prepared an illustrative view of how the property will be laid out, showing some landscaping, but the important part is the layout of the streets. So it's a one street design in and then 3 cul-de-sacs. All the streets will be built to city specifications, and they will become city streets. They have sidewalks, curb and gutters, and you'll notice that each of these lots range from 5,300 square feet to 5,400 square feet. And there is a water retention basin that is down at the southeast portion of the development. Other illustrative designs showing how each of whatever the house size would be put on the lot with driveways and landscaping. Once again, there is a water retention basin, and I'll discuss this a little bit farther. This was an early version of a design that could possibly be for the water retention. And after further engineering, the water retention basin is a little bit deeper than what was shown in this landscaped version. So in the change of zone request, it is to change from 7,500 to R1E, or 5,000 square foot lots. And when you go to the R1E zone, it allows for certain types of development standards that would not be allowed in an R1D. And if the Planning Commission remembers, the R1E zoning designation was a result of a PDD review process that the Planning Commission, through a subcommittee, worked out and adopted the new 1E zoning regulations in 2018. So this was this is one of the first rezonings of properties that the Planning Commission will have seen since that 2018 action. Once again, the track map is to 31 lots. The general plan is consistent with what they're proposing. Internal streets will be, and I'm sorry, this says private, it actually will be given to the city. It is ungated, meaning that there won't be a gate to get into the development. It will be open, primary perimeter walls, water basin, and there will be an HOA to maintain all the surrounding community properties. There was an environmental analysis that was conducted by the Altum Group, and our environmental consultant is on the call tonight, and they can answer any questions you may have. The initial study was completed, and we recommended a mitigated negative declaration, and those mitigation measures are mainly around sort of biological issues having to do with owls and other animals that may be on site when the grading starts. There was a traffic analysis that was conducted, and there were no significant impacts. And I included this trip generation table here showing the number of daily trips that would be expected during the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour, and shows that there will be not a significant impact on the streets throughout the adjacent neighborhoods. So looking at the findings, there are 3 findings for a change of zone. And keep in mind that the change of zone is conform with the general plan. It's suitable for uses permitted in that zone and is not likely to be detrimental to adjacent properties. And there are 7 findings for a tentative track map, and planning staff is recommending that the Planning Commission can make all of these findings. And your recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council. The recommendation is to adapt the MND, approve the change of zone, approve the tentative track map, and then subject to conditions of approval. There are 2 new conditions that were not added in the conditions that were given to the Planning Commission. I'd like to just mention that they would be added as administrative number 8, which is relative to park development fees. They will be required to pay an in lieu fee to provide additional park monies for the city. And then admin number 9 is a public art fees. They would have to pay an in lieu fee for public art within the city. These are standard conditions that I unfortunately were left off the conditions of approval that were in your packet. So staff would like to include those 3 conditions and any other conditions that the commission sees appropriate. So that concludes my report, Chair, and I am available for questions, and our consultant from Altum Group is here also.
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Miller. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm trying to unmute. Thank you. And I'm not sure if this is for Glenn or for the city attorney. I'm sorry, not the city attorney, the city engineer. Verona Road, my question is, will that ever cross the Whitewater Wash? And I'm assuming the answer is no.
No, it will not.
So assuming that, should there not be an accommodation for a half of a cul-de-sac at the end of Verona Road in what is now the drainage area? Because assuming Verona Road is going to have to be a turnaround down there, there will be future development potentially to the south that would dedicate the south half of that cul-de-sac. Should there not be an accommodation for the north half of a cul-de-sac on what is now shown as drainage lot D?
Yeah, so what we did in our conditions is we conditioned them to build the north half of the road from the center line to the face of curb, which is, I believe, 18 or 20 feet. I don't recall what it is. And then we had them extend that paving to, I believe it was 6 feet south of the center line to give a total pavement width of 24 feet so that it could be used to turn around in. I mean, that's plenty, that's sufficient pavement width for a vehicle to turn around in. The problem that you're going to have with trying to put in a hammerhead turnaround or some kind of a cul-de-sac is the lack of right-of-way. We do not have the right-of-way on the south, and we do not have the nexus to take it from somebody because there is no proposed development on the south.
Could you not have it in as a reserve? Or and I'm just questioning, you don't think it's important to have it in as a right-of-way reserve? Or do we not have the ability to get that during the track map process?
Yeah, we would be impacting another person's property, and that's not something that we would do.
Well, when the property to the south comes in to develop, aren't we hamstrung and not allowing, then we're not going to be able to get a full cul-de-sac because we will not have asked for it from this developer at the time he's coming in to develop.
We would ask for it from that developer when he comes in to develop. He would actually have to be building part of that hammerhead or part of that turnaround at that time.
But we won't have it on the north side.
Correct. That's the reason for the pavement width that we conditioned.
Okay, that's one question. The other question is lot 1, which is the first lot coming in off of Verona there. Right now, there's obviously large electric transmission lines that go through what is the future Verona Road, and those aren't going anywhere, I'm sure. There is a support wires that go down, that touch down in what is now shown as lot 1. Is in the future, when that's developed, is that support wire going to be an easy fix as far as relocation during the construction process, or is that a problematic issue because it's encumbering lot 1 right now in terms of where those wires are located?
Correct. Those lines, according to the atlas sheets that we have, actually meet the requirement to be undergrounded. So the applicant would be required to meet with an Edison service planner to verify that those lines could be undergrounded, which all of those guide wires, all those poles, everything would go away. But it's up to them to get to that point with an Edison service planner, and they're not at that level yet. I don't believe, but our conditions do condition them to do that.
Okay, that's a surprise that they would underground those major lines like that, but that would be a solution. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? I have one, and it concerns the retention basin. Is in the way that is being constructed right now, is there any room to do what we did at DAP and have a walk around in the area so that the residents have some place to walk, some green space to walk?
Glenn, do you want me to answer that?
Yes, we had discussions about this, and in the more detailed plans that were submitted to engineering, obviously there's some passive recreational use that may be able to be made as far as a walkway around it, but it is rather steep. And Rick, you want to talk about how that would work?
Sure. This retention, I'm all for using those retention basins, using them as a dog park or a little neighborhood gathering area. This one, I believe, though, is like Glenn said, is very steep. This retention basin is quite a bit steeper than the original design. On the, I guess it'd be the west wall of the retention basin. According to the plans that we have, that's close to 16 feet deep. 17 feet is quite steep. And we have some reservations on whether that wall could even be supported by the existing soil that's out there. My guess is that they'll probably come back at a later time with some kind of a design for some kind of a gravity wall or something to support that side of the retention basin. But they need to get into that design. But the walkway down to this would be pretty steep. I don't know if that'd be a good idea.
That answers my question. Thank you. For CC&Rs, why do they need CC&Rs?
There will be an HOA, and that would require a CC&R and a monthly assessment or some assessment.
Why, but why? Because I remember designing or working on this, this zoning overlay. And the idea was was open streets.
There, Madam Chair, if I might respond, there's common lots within the development that require oversight.
Where?
The retention basin is one of them. They'd be required to maintain that.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Any questions on the mitigated negative deck?
Right. Would you like the environmental consultant just to make a brief comment?
I have one, which is that I thought it was a little bit, the analysis on parks was not terribly good because it didn't really detail the fact, I mean, there's no parks in this part of town, which is why I was asking about the retention basin. And I just think when we get those, we should get a better analysis.
Right. That's correct. When you when the project is forwarded to the city council, there is a addendum that we can add to the section on recreation, and to note that this is an area of the city that's park deficient, and meaning that there is not a active park within 1 mile or walkable distance from this new neighborhood, and we can note that.
I've lost your voice.
We can put that in the environmental analysis that this is a park deficient.
That would be very helpful when we get to a motion. I had one other question for Jim Priest. Having worked on this, is this an appropriate area for this rezoning? When we originally started it, I don't know if we looked at an area of town. I'm assuming it's an appropriate area for this rezoning, but is there any analysis that staff has to go through that this is appropriate?
Staff has provided the analysis that it is consistent with the general plan designation. R1E is a new zoning classification, as the commission will know, that we've only adopted just in the last few years. As to whether it is appropriate to development out there, I mean, that's ultimately the policy call that the commission will recommend and the council will decide. According to staff's report, they believe that the findings that can be made here and that this zoning can move forward. Ultimately, it's the commission's recommendation and the council's ultimate determination whether to rezone it this way. It's a legislative call of the city.
Thank you. There being no other questions of staff, this is a public hearing. Is the applicant present?
Yes, the applicant is here.
And you have 10 minutes to present.
Sure. Well, I think Glenn did a very nice job presenting the project to the council. It's kind of pretty straightforward, residential single family home development. So I don't think I really have anything more to add, other than we appreciate the commissioner's time tonight and consideration for the project, and certainly available if there's any questions. One thing I guess I would maybe comment too, because, there is the larger Serena Park project, which is adjacent to that. And all the property to the west there is designated as a park. Now, when and how that development will occur, we're not too sure. And, as a developer, we've been kind of hopeful that they would get started, but it's just been a long time. And so we felt it's kind of time that we could do it and feel that this project can stand on its own, even without that one going forward. So that's really all I have, unless you have some other questions. So
anybody have questions for the applicant? Seeing none, it comes back to the commission. I'm just going to throw out a motion that we approve this with one the one change, we approve all, do we have to vote on each item separately, or can the motion include all three?
Oh, the motion can include all three.
So the motion would be that we approve the zoning change, we approve the tentative track map, and we approve the negative deck with the one addition to the negative deck that you were going to add, which is an additional analysis on parkland. Is there a second for this, or does anybody want to make this motion themselves?
I have a question, and procedurally, we heard from the applicant, but I just wanted to make sure there was no one else from the public that wanted
Oh,
to
I'm
speak.
sorry. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Madam Chair, no one from the public has signed up to speak in advance.
Is there anyone from the public who is here who would like to speak? I'm sorry, I made that assumption.
I think the folks that are still on are environmental consultants.
And you know all of them, thank you. So the public hearing is closed. And there's a tentative motion if anyone would like to make it or second it. Commissioner Hirschbein.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Under discussion.
Yes.
Does any other commissioner have an issue with lot 14? It's the one that's between the two cul-de-sacs at the north end, and it just seems to be a lot that's surrounded by streets. And I don't know what can be done there, given the overall layout of this. But lot 14 to me just seems like a very difficult lot to live in, number one. There's just kind of a comment. I mean,
it's not unlike many lots in the Indian Canyon neighborhoods. I'm trying to think of the development name, but there are a number of parcels like that that are between little bumper streets like that. You know, when you look at those streets, they're going to have so little traffic. I don't see it as an issue.
Okay.
Somebody's going to see that home as a real benefit because it has a lot more land around it and it has a straight out view to the Whitewater Channel. So I think if anything, it might be a more desirable parcel. And aren't we to understand that this may not be the final layout, that this was just illustrative? Didn't you tell us that? This could change.
Well, the street layout, the track map will be consistent.
Will that lock? Okay.
Yeah, it's, I mean, unless they come in and amend the track map when it comes into final, which will be way down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, if I was picking out a lot, I was looking at this and I was going to build a house here, I'd pick that lot or 13 or 18 personally.
Are we shopping or are we voting?
Well, I mean, it was an issue, so I just thought I'd mention my preference.
Just pulling your leg there.
Okay, is that that ends discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyon had to excuse herself from the meeting. Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Roberts.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners. I sure appreciate it.
Good luck to you.
Appreciate it, that too. Good night.
Good night.
We have no unfinished business and no new business. We have Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments.
Madam Chair, before I get to that portion of the agenda, if we could just get the formal motion for item 2G, please.
Oh, the formal, oh, I'm sorry, we do have. Item 2G is Yokan Zhao for a conditional use permit, major development permit, and tentative tract map to construct a 12-unit multifamily residential development consisting of for sale condominiums on a 0.95 acre site located at 1424 Camino Norte. And I believe the motion you want is a motion to continue to a date uncertain or a date certain.
Our request would be for a date certain of October 12th.
So I will take a motion to continue this to October 12th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roberts.
Sorry.
Vice Chair Roberts, you might have been muted. And Chairwoman.
Yes.
All right, that motion has carried.
Moving right along to Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments.
I have a request, and it has to do with this last vote we just took, which is when staff finds out that an item is going to be pulled, can you let us know as soon as you find out? And that way we'll avoid spending our own time kind of studying the staff report and the documents.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can pass that along. Of course, it's subject to the motion, but we can certainly let the commission know that we will be recommending that it be carried or continued rather.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, question.
Oh, Commissioner Maruzzi.
At some point, I'd like to discuss, or at least hear a report on the city council's decisions, because there was a denial of one of our approvals.
Yes, so I was going to deliver that during planning director's report, but you know, as you know, New Church 2 LLC did appeal the commission's decision on Orchid Tree Hotel, which was to deny their extension requests. And after discussion of that during their hearing, the council did grant them a 1-year extension through May 7th, 2023. So they did grant the appeal and a 1-year extension. In tandem with that, the applicant did also request to extend the remaining milestones in their performance schedule to the covenant agreement, which was also granted by the city council for 45 days. So that essentially extends, you know, a few different timelines, but the one where they need to have pulled their permits and begin construction is extended to March 1st of 2023.
And just a question with that, I'm assuming that they could meet the permit requirements and get a permit on the project, but not meet the milestones for the TOT rebate.
That's right. I mean, there are still other milestones associated with the project that they, you know, but they indicated to the city council that they felt that they could meet the milestones. And David is on the call. I don't know if he has anything to add to that specificity, but they indicated that they would attempt to meet those milestones, and they've all been extended 45 days.
The only other thing that I would add was that the city council did request that staff meet with the applicant on a monthly basis moving forward to address nuisance, security, maintenance issues, so that, you know, we can avoid things that have happened in the past.
Is there, Planning Director, do you have more in your report?
I don't. That's all I have for my report, but I did want to thank you all for welcoming me to my first meeting and for being patient as I fumbled through this, but thank you so much.
Thank you. We are adjourned until 5:30 Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. A nice 2 weeks.